A lot of damage. A motorist in Kansas trapped in their cars on the freeway. That's nothing compared to the emotional damage Hodges can expect. Having to deal with a sick cat, frustrating new hours at work, and a confusing breakup all in the past 6 months.
You know, we're getting reports that he recently loaned $600 to a friend who has no intention of paying him back and slammed his finger in a car door last month. Does the National Weather Service have any advice for Kevin today?
Not much he can do. This guy is really vulnerable right now. Authorities are recommending that he just stay indoors and think about his mistakes.
That sounds like good advice. You know, he looks like a real sad piece of shit. Stay warm out there, Jordan.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program. As always, you can take control of the airwaves here and bring up whatever is on your mind. The number for you is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, you've got Ian,
Matt, and Joa.
And of course, you can bring up anything you want. That is the point here on Free Talk Live. We always bring stuff to the table to talk about. Joa, tonight you want to talk about a SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, one of their recent attacks on people in the freedom community.
Yeah.
Specifically, We Are Change, which is a group that Luke Rudkowski, I believe, is one of the founders of. He now, by the way, lives in New Hampshire. He has made the move. You're going to be talking, though, about the Los Angeles chapter of
We Are Leaders.
The poor bastards still stuck out there in California. You know, it's amazing how delusional libertarians are in other places like California, like New York, the two least free places.
They're going to win any minute now, any second.
They really do believe that.
And it's right around the corner. It's coming. There's no way we can lose. We're almost there. This is the home stretch, and we're winning, guys.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what happens out there. I mean, of course, the most recent thing in California was the whole recall thing with Newsom, the governor there.
How are they going to spin this to themselves?
The fact that they lost it, you mean? The same old. Like, I saw somebody posting on Twitter. Of course, Free State Project is the migration of freedom-loving people to New Hampshire, and their Twitter account's just been killing it ever since Jeremy Kauffman took it over. He's been doing an amazing job.
I don't want to. You know, he's got a lot of haters, and I'm not one of them.
Yeah, he's doing amazing stuff there, and he'll call people out. You know, like, hey, you know, if you're in California and you're a libertarian, you obviously don't care about freedom. You know, and if what's important to you is surfing and babes, then man, stay in California.
Yeah, keep beating that dead horse over there. I'm sure you'll get somewhere.
But don't act like freedom matters.
I might make a concession for the libertarians, but don't even know that they're libertarian and they live in the Northern California area and they're just cowboys that live up in the woods and nobody's seen them for years.
Yeah, I'm talking about the ones that know they're libertarians.
The state of Jefferson is kind of a. You know, that gets traction every once in a while.
That's a secession movement.
Yeah.
It involves Northern California, Southern Oregon.
Yeah. They just kind of want to...
A little bit of Idaho.
Yeah, they just kind of want to hit the eject button.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I support any kind of secession. I'm all about that. Of course, New Hampshire state representatives just this week filed a actual bill for a constitutional amendment that, if passed by the voters, if it makes it to the ballot, it has to get through the House and Senate first. But if passed... will immediately secede New Hampshire from the United States.
Isn't that gorgeous?
So that actually puts...
Did you see the poll in the Union Leader?
Yeah, amazing. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. The Union Leader, which is our one of our major newspapers here in New Hampshire, the Union Leader.
It's the top paper.
It's the top? Okay, yeah, it's a big newspaper. They ran a poll on the front page if would you support the secession that's being put to vote in the New Hampshire State House. And
no, the question was, would you support the question being put on the ballot, which is different.
Okay, put on the ballot. My bad. Yeah, something along those lines, though.
Still,
80%, a little over 80% of the people who responded to the poll responded in favor of seceding from the Union.
Yeah, I think since it did eclipse 80%, I think it did drop down to the high 70s, but still.
Yeah, at one point, I saw it was like 84.
It's amazing. Now, I mean, it's an unscientific internet poll, so take it with a big grain of salt. but it does go, at the very least, it does go to show that libertarians can stack an unscientific internet poll a lot better than the statists can.
Well, if the people who care about if you're against this, they would have been up there voting too. So
That's the
kind
point.
of yeah.
Well, the thing is also, I don't know how stacked that is. I mean, I'm
don't
sure
either.
there's people, probably somebody voted once or twice. I voted, once. But I just to click the poll, but I didn't see like a lot of fanfare when I saw the poll posted on the Free State Project Facebook group. I didn't see a lot of people responding to the person who commented it, but that's how I found it. And I went and checked it out, and I was like, oh my God, there's 84% of the people responding positively to seceding from the Union. And I went and did it. And I gotta say, I don't think there's a whole lot of poll fudging on that. And the Union leader certainly is not going to fudge that poll on the behalf of Liberty people.
And also consider that a lot of like these libertarian anarchists just don't like voting. So I mean,
yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, that's true. I was really happy to see those results.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of locals. I think there's a big freedom sentiment in New Hampshire that's very natural, very organic and ingrained, and was here before we got here.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And the reason that I agree is because I've done some outreach in person at different events like the county fair, or every year there's they do like an Independence Day fireworks. Usually it's the day before Independence Day, but over at the local baseball field. And so, if it's Independence Day, it's a good time to talk to people about independence. So
Right.
I bring out the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence flyers that I've had printed up for years and hand those things out to people. And if you hand out enough flyers, somebody inevitably is going to like crumple it up and throw it at you or whatever. But I don't think that ever happened with the Independence flyer that I gave out. And usually people, they're usually going somewhere, right? So they're not going to stand there and talk to you or anything like that. But as they kind of walk away and they look at the thing and they kind of get an idea for what they're looking at, you can see a smile spread across their face. Like, there's a lot of positive response. And of those people that you do talk to, they generally are pretty positive. Now, there are some concerns. There are some objections initially, and we're going to have to get through those. We're going to have to answer those objections to people. Like one of the people on the left, we had him on our meeting this week. We have like weekly progress meetings on how we're doing on moving this ball forward of New Hampshire independence that we've been doing on Tuesday evenings. And Dave Ridley invited some of the opposition to this meeting, just to let's let the opposition say their piece. What is it that what do they have to say about this? And so an old guy in his 70s got on and he started talking about how this was an attack on his private property because he is on Social Security and Medicare and he needs to continue receiving government welfare or else bad things will happen to him.
Because that's inherently his, right? Like he earned it.
Well, I mean, he feels like he did, right? Like people pay into Social Security. The response was basically, well, as our understanding is if you move out of the United States and you're getting Social Security, you still continue to get Social Security. So moving out of the United States doesn't stop that from happening for people that, are quote unquote owed Social Security. Now, of course, if and when Social Security runs out of money, well, you're going to be up S Creek in that case either way. And apparently, according to the federal government, they are running out of money sooner than they expected to run out of money.
Shocker.
So expected to be within like the next decade or 12 years or something like that.
So government has to fulfill their contract. So I don't think that guy would have to really worry.
The concern would be, I think, probably the Medicare. And, I don't know how that would work as far as, obviously, if you're living in Europe or something like that, Medicare probably isn't going to pay your hospital bills. But I don't know. Right. But hey, dude, Massachusetts is right down there.
Right there. Exactly. It's literally 10 miles away. Go for it.
Yeah. So
I'll help you move.
But and so these are going to be some of the concerns that that people have. Those are people on the left that would say things like that. I'm sure some on the right also want their Social Security and all that. But another objection I've gotten from people on the right is, well, I love the military, and the military keeps us safe.
Which is just more welfare.
But what would you say to that if you were talking to somebody about independence for New Hampshire? And they are afraid. They're afraid that China's going to invade.
I don't know if it's the best thing to say, but there are a ton of armed people in New Hampshire. This is probably one of the most well-defended small countries on the planet.
Well, more machine guns per capita.
More machine guns per capita than any other, and I mean, we're going up against places like Texas when we say that.
I think there's enough people with the right mindset to understand if there was an invasion, we'd be banding together properly versus like other states that would just be sitting back and hoping the military would come in and help. But like the forces are here. It's us. It's not, that was the point of the militias, is that we would have to rise up and band together and do it ourselves.
Yeah, and I think reminding them gently of those facts about New Hampshire may get the gears turning, you know. And this initial filing of this constitutional amendment here in New Hampshire is going to give us the excuse to have these conversations. Sure. It's going to make this a realistic possibility. Is it likely to happen? I don't know. At this point, with 84% on a unscientific poll, maybe it is more likely than some people think that it is. But this is the time where we're going to be able to change people's minds. We're going to be able to hear their objections. We're going to be able to answer them and get them thinking about this issue seriously for the first time maybe in their lives.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, said John Wilkes Booth.
More coming up.
Oof. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after PorcFest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. forkfest.party. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Is Free Talk Live, and of course you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You know, we told you last year about Intercoin, which can help any business or organization launch their own currency or raise money using their own token. Now Intercoin.org has launched worldwide. Is there a token that you want to launch or an app that you want to build? You can go to Intercoin.org, enter your email, and the team will get in touch and learn about your needs. And while you're there, if you want, you can get some Intercoin investor tokens for yourself. Head on over to Intercoin.org. With you tonight, it's Ian,
Matt,
and Joa.
We started out just basically touching on the California delusion that libertarians that are still there, and New Yorkers as well, and really people in a lot of places, but New York and California, the two worst, the most tyrannical states out there in the United States. And recently, people in California actually thought they could dethrone their king. They thought that they could actually, through the political process,
clowns,
take down Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. And they didn't even come close. And I don't think anyone should have ever thought they would have come close. I mean,
in those states, you have three choices of what you want to be: a tyrant, a herd member, or a clown. There is no freedom, people in California. There are only clowns. And and you're talking about Jeremy Kauffman,
the founder of Library and Odyssey.
Yeah, and taking over the Free State. He has the Free State Project Twitter page, right?
I think he also is running the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire Twitter as well.
Oh, is he? Because it's funny. Yeah, you can tell. He's so poignant. He's very, very succinct and hilarious every time he says something. But he said the catch line on the Free State Project's Twitter page is, there are only two types of libertarians: those okay with losing and those that live in New Hampshire. Yeah. It's so true. It's outstanding.
True. Hashtag winning.
Come on.
There's one little aspect here from California, and the fact that Gavin Newsom won dramatically in this particular recall election, and that is a NBC News exit poll. So that's standing outside of polling locations, talking to people that went to vote. Found that voters sided with Newsom on public health measures, with a plurality of voters, or 47%, saying that Newsom's COVID policies, some of the most restrictive policies in the entire United States,
world,
47% of exit voters said that the policies were about right. Another 18% said they weren't strict enough. So, you do the math there, and you're looking at a significant percentage, 65% of California voters saying that this guy was either strict enough, just barely, or not strict enough.
They're right, I mean, if that's what they want, if that's what they want to create their world,
that's what they get.
That's what they get. Let them eat cake.
Only 30% of respondents said the measures were too strict. And I guess the remaining 5% didn't know. So there's a tremendous number of people that love the authoritarian state in California.
If those polls are secure.
Well,
that
whatever.
Could be total propaganda. The elections could be total propaganda. Whenever somebody asks a big group of people what their opinion is, and the people asking the question want that opinion to go a certain way, they have all the control in the world to make the opinion go. So if they want to propagandize, we just got done talking about how a local cop, what'd he say? He never wanted to arrest people for marijuana, but he had to. They made me. Nobody, and Bonnie's in the studio, but she's over there, snuggled up on her blanket. She's in Texas. She thinks this is cold at 70 degrees.
Well, she is sitting literally in the air conditioner. That's the coldest seat in the house.
Fair enough. You get off on this one. So, but he's saying that he had to do something. You don't have to do anything. Nobody, put a gun to your head and say, go attack those people.
That's true.
So,
but look, man, it's not hard to believe that these numbers are true for California. It's California. Have you ever been to San Francisco?
I've never been to I've been to L.A.
Yeah. Well, L.A. right now is expanding their vaccination requirements. So Los Angeles came in basically right after New York City. You heard that New York City now has a vaccine requirement.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, I just saw a video of a black family that was trying to go to a restaurant in New York City, and they got kicked out of the restaurant because they're unvaccinated.
You should be trashing that restaurant.
And
people should actually be crucifying that restaurant.
The dude was like, the guy was like, you seriously, you're going to enforce segregation? He says, we've got a religious exemption. You're supposed to not discriminate. He said, apparently there's like signage that they have to post, and it says something about non-discrimination. I've not seen the signage, but he kept saying to the manager, like, oh, look at the sign. You're discriminating against us. And the manager's like, yeah, you can't be in here. You don't have a vaccination pass or whatever. And he looked around, tried to get some support from other people that were in the diner, and nobody would support him. One guy flipped him off. So, I mean, segregation is here, and it's real, and it's happening in New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New Orleans, if there's anything left down there. But these are some of the cities that have implemented a vaccination requirement. And now Los Angeles County, according to FoxLA.com, is issuing a new health order later this week that will require proof of vaccination for indoor bars, wineries, breweries, nightclubs, and lounges. It will also require proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test for outdoor mega events, including Dodgers, Rams, and Chargers games, according to the county public health director. So they already were requiring it for almost all other indoor things like eating indoors, gyms, that sort of thing. So it was a fairly large list prior to this. So now, surprise, it's expanding.
I don't really understand that. So you're saying they have to have a negative COVID test proof? Like, so, I mean, you could have gotten COVID on the way to the stadium, let's say.
Yep.
And, oh, no, I got tested yesterday. I don't understand like that. It's just
it's an obedience thing.
It's an
and let's not forget the guy who invented the PCR test said
Spoke out
it
against
won't work for this. It isn't the right test for this. It won't work.
Didn't he show up dead after that?
And then he turned up dead.
Yeah.
Well, he also fought Anthony Fauci back during the AIDS pandemic too. Like the whole AIDS thing, he was like, "This isn't how any of this works." What did this guy's? He openly called Anthony Fauci, and this guy's a Nobel Prize winner. And he called Anthony Fauci like basically the hack of all hacks.
I've been doing a lot of research on the whole AIDS thing in Fauci, and it is just wow.
Yeah.
I really suggest everyone to go look up Fauci and his AIDS agenda. And I don't want to make any super claims, but I tell you, it's looking really, really
Did you watch
scary.
the documentary I talked about, House of Numbers?
I haven't seen that one, but I've seen other ones. Like so, I think you use the same clips and everything.
What's the summary? I mean, what did this guy do regarding AIDS? Fauci?
Essentially, the treatment for HIV inherently gives you AIDS. And so anyone out there thinking they have HIV and get their tests and try to get treatment, you're essentially killing your immune system and putting AIDS into your body. Or, you're basically...
And this guy was pimping it? Fauci was pimping the treatments?
Yeah. And
Fauci had like an $80 billion slush fund at one point at his disposal.
And at that time, he was really pushing that that gay people should get tested and get treatments. So it was really, I think he was just trying to kill off the gay population in this whole thing.
That may have been a trial run for some future endeavor, too,
Sure.
So the requirements keep getting stricter in places like California, Los Angeles County, San Francisco, etc. And yet people still who care to love liberty, they're still there. And they're not planning, a lot of them aren't planning on leaving. The smart ones are. They're saying, we're getting out of here. And, of course, New Hampshire is a great destination. You can go to 101reasonsfilm.com, get the 101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire. We're coming up here in moments. It's Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denzelo. France has cancelled a gala event at their embassy in Washington. The move comes after the US, UK and Australia announced a submarine deal without European consultations. Earlier on Thursday, the French Foreign Minister said that Australia had betrayed its relationship with France after the Australian Prime Minister said his country was scrapping a $65 billion deal with France to acquire nuclear-powered submarines. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
There's been some really strong language coming from the French government on Thursday after this announcement from Australia. Jean-Yves Le Drian, the French Foreign Minister, saying, "I'm very angry today and bitter. This is not something allies do to each other." It comes after Australia tore up the 2016 deal with France and French defence firm Naval Group to build 12 submarines, something that Australia now wants to do with the US and the UK instead. Ross Cullen, Paris.
Meanwhile, the European Union says it was not consulted about the plans, which came the day before the bloc announced its new Indo-Pacific strategy. Josep Borrell is the EU's top diplomat.
We've only just been made aware of the alliance, and certainly we weren't consulted. As High Representative for Security Policy for the European Union, I was not made aware. I assume such an arrangement has been worked on for a while, but we weren't part and parcel of it. This is a good opportunity to remind people of the importance of Indo-Pacific strategy that we ourselves are focused on, and make this strategy more important.
Authorities in Germany say they foiled an attack on a Jewish synagogue in the northwest of the country. A man has been arrested, with local media saying police believe explosives were being prepared as part of the plot. Southwest has become the latest US airline to start offering staff extra money to get vaccinated against COVID-19. It comes as the Delta variant has caused a new wave of coronavirus infections across the country. US correspondent Sarah Walton reports.
Delta, American and United Airlines have already made similar announcements. And now Southwest says staff that submit proof of vaccination by the 15th of November will get a bonus. The company is going a step further too, saying it will stop sick pay for any unvaccinated workers who have to quarantine with coronavirus. President Joe Biden has announced that coronavirus vaccinations will soon become mandatory at large private firms and federal organizations across the US. Republicans have threatened to sue the government, calling the decision unconstitutional.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate cut to global greenhouse gas emissions to prevent further irreversible damage to the environment. The comments were made at the launch of a new climate report and just days before world leaders gather for the annual United Nations General Assembly. From bureaus worldwide, this.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio with you tonight, it's Ian,
Matt, and Joa.
Talking about restrictions on the increase. As surprise, surprise, they created vaccine requirements and now they're increasing them in Los Angeles County. And that may mean that comedian Jim Breuer will never be playing in Los Angeles ever again.
Oh boy.
He came out recently and made the statement that he is canceling any shows at any venues that have him booked if he finds out that they're mandating vaccine requirements for their customers. He's canceling. And so good on him. Were you with us when we went to go see him last year? You weren't.
I was going to say, you guys saw them.
Yeah.
I wish I had. Now that you're saying this, I wish I had gone.
At that outdoor car drive-in thing, right?
Yeah, they did a drive-in performance at the Keene Fairgrounds, basically, and it was he was great. I mean, he's definitely a critic of this whole new normal thing, and he just ranted about that on the stage, which it was ironic at the same time. The venue itself was, they had like security that was yelling at people if they weren't walking around with masks on, and so while he was attacking the restrictions from the stage, some of them were being enforced on the ground.
Incredible.
Unfortunately.
Now it's time for Vince Vaughn and Penn and Teller to step up.
Oh, you haven't heard about Penn?
No.
Ooh,
I'm sorry.
He can stay in Vegas. I tell you that. He can stay in Vegas.
So sorry.
Why? There's no way he's pro tyranny.
I am so
Shut up.
Yeah, last year, Penn, as I understand it, I think it was the COVID situation. He went real crazy and turned against libertarianism.
What?
There was an endorsement video that he and Teller were involved in, endorsing Joe Biden.
Shut up.
Yeah, and one could look at that. If all you saw was just the video, you might think, okay, they just hate Trump that much. They're doing this one time. No, he turned against libertarianism in, I don't know, the 72nd year of his life or 70th year. I think he's almost 70 or something like that. He's getting up there in age, and he's been a longtime libertarian, but maybe he never really was. And he never really came across as the most principled libertarian when you'd hear him talk about it. But it was always better to have him than not have him, because he did bring a lot of attention to the ideas of freedom in the time that he was a libertarian.
I think one thing to point out is, have you ever seen his house, his home? He literally made it look like a prison. So in
the Vegas area?
Yeah, he has like a barbed wire
desert,
fence,
right?
yeah, around like this building that looks like a prison.
Wow.
Maybe he just likes the feel of a police state? I don't know.
Google's Penn Jillette.
I haven't gotten all the details. I was just looking at this the other night, though, like last night or the day before that, because he posted a photograph of him on Twitter. And I follow him on Twitter, and I'm just going to show you the photograph here. Do you know who he's standing with there?
God, it's Gavin Newsom.
It's Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. And the headline, or the tweet says, "Well, we both survived. Congrats." So the very same Penn Jillette, who used to be the critic of the authoritarian state, has now embraced the authoritarian state, and it is just so sad to see it happen.
Too many blue pills.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to the guy. I mean, apparently he was freaked out about COVID, and according to one of the comments that I read from him from 2020, where he was explaining why he was no longer a libertarian, he was likening people who didn't wear a mask to drunk driving.
Oh my God, come on now.
So he literally felt as though if you weren't wearing a mask, you were putting him and other innocent people in danger. That whole viewpoint of which we heard from a couple of quote-unquote libertarians here in New Hampshire. Remember Dennis Goddard?
Dennis Goddard
was
nuts.
Calling people. I mean, he was already
manslaughterers.
He was already a bad egg, but he was calling people manslaughterer if they didn't wear a mask.
Yeah, I like watching his show. Sometimes he's got like that Fool Us
Penn
show.
Jillette?
Yeah, and it's like a magician show, and if they fool him, they get an award. But because of the whole COVID restrictions, they put all these like TVs behind them instead of an audience. So like all these people watching live,
so bad.
Were able to watch it. But like I remember like the first like maybe episode that they did that, he was really standoffish to it. Like he just showed those like kind of threw those vibes out there like this is ridiculous. But then now I think he's kind of used to it.
Now he's fully embraced all that craziness.
I think it's kind of like he has that Howard Stern effect that he's willing to like sell himself out just so he can continue to make whatever millions of dollars, and
I
so
don't
he
get
can
it. I don't
be
get
comfortable.
But
I'd
how
be
could he
willing to
not be
risk it all.
comfortable? But that's the thing. Like you're in your 70s. You're literally at the end of your life for the average American male, right? Like you're not going to probably make it past 74. Now, to his credit, he's lost a lot of weight over the last few years. He looks way better than he ever has. But you're at the end of your life. You've been a successful magician. He is somebody who doesn't have a drug habit. Like he always brags about how he never uses drugs or anything like that. So, I mean, he's not throwing presumably he's not throwing all of his money into cocaine or something like that. So He probably has a decent amount of money that he could live off of. It's not like his career,
Right.
if it ended tomorrow,
When you told me that was my first thought.
it wouldn't throw him out on the streets. So he's not doing this for money. I think he literally
He believes
is
it.
afraid. He believes it. He bought into this propaganda like so many people who should have known better.
It's
who
such
should-
cowardice.
Yeah.
It's cowardice and suckerism.
It's unbelievable from somebody who's a critic of government. How could you believe them? I mean, they lie to you. It doesn't matter who it is. They lie to you. That's what they do. Joe Biden lies. Donald Trump lies. George Bush, Obama, all of the other people in Washington, D.C., they all lie to you.
They have military-grade people who are experts at lying to people.
Yep.
Like there's actual psychological warfare experts who are expert creators of lie campaigns to make people in groups feel certain ways.
And they're frequently outed for their lies, right? Like every government
time.
scandal that we've seen so many times. One of the most recent ones was that they were lying constantly about Afghanistan, that the military people, the generals and such, were even lying within government about it. They were lying to, presidents and things like that. They were There's so many lies out there that these people tell. Why would anyone believe them now?
My grandmother drove a school bus for 35 years and was probably the most honest person I know. And I'm starting to wonder, was she not just an incredible liar in some other way? Because she accepted a government paycheck for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
She's got to be. She had to be. She had to be.
I
a
don't
total
know.
lie.
Well, Penn spoke his word about it. I'm waiting for Teller to speak out. That's a pun.
He was in the, I get it, but he was in, was another thing that was disappointing was like, all right, well, maybe Teller still, no. He was in the video, the endorsement video of Joe Biden with Penn.
Geez.
So it's like they both flipped because Teller was also a libertarian.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad. Sorry about that. I mean, I'm sorry to rain on your parade
I
there,
am
man.
bummed.
Because remember, Penn at one time said he ought to be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.
With the Free Staters, yeah.
He said that. That was like, I don't know, 2013 or something
There's
like
video
that.
of him
I
saying
think that's
that.
still rotating on the audios.
That's on every single Free Keene video up until this year.
Did you take it down?
I haven't taken it. Oh no, I haven't taken it down.
Maybe we should just leave it out.
It's
Make
still
it-
true of
maybe
old
just
Penn.
remind everyone
Yeah,
that he said this.
Old Penn did say that.
You got to support old Penn.
Fat Penn.
Rest in peace. You know what? Maybe there's a Paul McCartney style conspiracy. Maybe they did
Replaced
something
him.
with the real Penn Jillette.
Yeah,
They replaced him with
pre-MK Ultra Penn.
Yeah, the skinny Penn. Look, his nose is different than the old Penn.
Speaking of skinny people, did you hear that Kim Jong-un has lost weight allegedly?
No.
Dude doesn't look anything like. I think they've got a fake.
Oh, sure.
One of the body doubles. or
Well,
whatever.
he was in the hospital for a long time, for a while.
Yeah,
and
there were
his-
people saying he was dead.
Yeah, and his
at one
sister
point.
was looking. His sister was doing the strut.
And now Kim is back
Yeah.
and looks like a skinny guy.
It was funny. It was like amongst, I guess, I don't know, Parliament, whatever they have over there. But he was like just smoking a cigarette amongst all of them. It was
You
really
talking about
funny.
the new younger
Yeah.
or the new skinny
Yeah.
Kim?
It was pretty funny.
603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want. Coming up, the Southern Poverty Law Center is on the attack against folks over at We Are Change. And we're sort of focusing on Los Angeles things because it's We Are Change out of Los Angeles. Plus, Los Angeles police, the sheriff's deputies, there are gangs of L.A. sheriff's deputies. I mean, we know the cops are gangs already, but it's even worse there. We're coming up.
The Shire Free Church offers a sanctuary to those seeking an escape from state churches.
The Shire Free Church is an interfaith, diverse group of people that may not share identical theological beliefs. As a member in or minister of the Shire Free Church, you are a sovereign individual and may be the faith of your choice.
We don't claim to have all of the answers.
We are open to all peaceful people.
We want to learn from each other.
What unifies the Shire Free Church and its diverse members is peace,
love,
and liberty. There are many paths to God, one for every individual.
The Shire Free Church does not define a specific path beyond those parameters that must be your foundation.
Peace as your way.
Love as your guide.
and liberty as your light.
Learn more at church.shiresociety.com.
That's church.shiresociety.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex where renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Hey, it's Free Talk Live. The number, if you want to join us here, is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio with you, it's Ian,
Matt, and Joa.
Get your early bird tickets now for Liberty in Our Lifetime, an event happening in Mulheim, Switzerland, hosted by the Free Private Cities Foundation. But move quickly, the early bird rate only lasts until September 20th, so you don't have too much longer to get the early bird. Afterwards, you can still get tickets at lifetimeliberty.com. It's a new conference. Liberty in Our Lifetime aims to explore projects happening right now around the world that are working to achieve the lofty goal of securing freedom in our lifetime. Speakers include people from Crypto Valley, Prospera, the Seasteading Institute, and more will be speaking at this October 16th event. So this thing's coming up fast. But maybe going to Switzerland isn't really your thing. It's harder than ever, of course, to travel internationally now. All kinds of ridiculous requirements. So it might be hard to make that trip. Well, they do have digital tickets available as well. So you'll be able to attend online, watch it through live streaming. Go to lifetimeliberty.com to get your digital tickets to Liberty in Our Lifetime. Again, it's happening October 16th, and the early bird price ends on September 20th. See what people are doing all around the world to create voluntary societies with a live and let live attitude at lifetimeliberty.com. Because now's the time for people to start taking the idea of migration for freedom very, very seriously.
10 years ago was a better time to start taking the idea of migration for freedom seriously.
Agreed. I mean, but here we are. And if you haven't done it yet, then you really need to start considering, are you in the best place for chances for freedom, for seeing more freedom rather than less over time? If you're in somewhere like Los Angeles, the answer is no, you're not.
Absolutely
and
not.
If you still think that there's a chance something's going to turn around there, you're absolutely delusional. But Joey, you've got
They're clowns.
Yeah, you've got a story. I mean, I don't want to insult anybody. I wouldn't use that. I personally wouldn't use that term.
I'll do that. I'll play the bad cop.
Yeah. Well,
I was just quoting that.
There's a chance. There's a chance we could turn somebody, change somebody's mind on this, because we're actually winning here.
Yeah, and everybody's afraid of clowns, so stop being one and move to New Hampshire.
Yeah, when you come here, we'll wash your makeup off and
we'll help you move.
Throw that foam nose in the garbage. Get over here.
Yeah. What's your story tonight, Joey? You've got something out of Los Angeles as well.
Yeah, well, talking about clowns, the SPLC, the
Southern Poverty
Law Center, SPLCenter.org. They released an article about We Are Change LA leader Belize group's moderate image and its conspiracy-obsessed patriot organizations, LA chapter chief involved in sovereign citizens movement. And I just first I want to say that there's nowhere the guy that they're claiming to make these statements he ever says sovereign citizen. So they're just throwing that out there, and they always put it in like semi quotes, and they're not ever like quoting him. So
it's a buzzword.
Yeah, it's a buzzword they like to use.
It's also a negative buzzword that has a ton of negative stuff associated with it, like murder. They love to suggest that so-called sovereign citizens are violent. And, of course, people that actually believe in sovereignty, none of them would call themselves a sovereign citizen.
Right. Actually, sovereign citizens do believe in murder. And I mean this wholeheartedly, because the only sovereign citizens out there are actually cops. Because they're sovereign from the law, and they still claim to be citizens.
That's an interesting point.
Wow, good call.
Yeah, so when they murder someone, they get away with it, and they're still citizens.
All right, so what's going on?
All right, so We Are Change is an organization. This article, you disseminate how it is, but it sounds amazing. I love how they did this. I'm all for this article. We Are Change is an organization that likes to quote Martin Luther King Jr., Einstein, Gandhi, and others talking about the evils of war. It describes itself as a nonviolent citizens-based grassroots peace and social justice movement, and reacted angrily this year when the Southern Poverty Law Center categorized it as part of the conspiracy-obsessed anti-government patriot movement. And they make patriot in quotes like it's bad, too. And then We Are Change leader Luke Rodowski complained at the time that
Free Stater.
Yeah.
Moved to New Hampshire, by the way.
Great guy.
Yep.
He complained at the time that the SPLC said nothing of We Are Change alleged raising money for 9/11 first responders, toy drives during the holidays, clothing drives, and feeding the homeless. Now they mentioned, I guess.
By the way, before you go on, Luke Rodowski left New York City. He's a New Yorker.
Which was a good move.
Yeah, native New Yorker.
Absolutely.
So it is possible for people in these statist hellholes to wake up and get a clue and move to where other people are like you here in New Hampshire.
Absolutely. But Bruno Ernst Broweiler, sorry if I messed that up.
This is the leader in L.A.?
Yeah, Broweiler, We Are Change Los Angeles leader, puts the group, the largest patriot organization in the country.
Wow.
That seems amazing.
Good for them.
Yeah, with 102 chapters in 33 states, in considerably more radical light. That just seems. I'm sorry. That statement is just kind of ridiculous to me. When you say it's considerably more radical light, you just contradicted yourself.
But radical for what? You mentioned some things like peace. I mean, there's other things that they stood for.
Yeah, like the quote Gandhi.
Yeah.
Geez.
Oh no.
It makes you wonder, like, what's the deal with the SPLC? And if you remember the old days of the SPLC with that Mark Potok guy,
I don't know who that is.
He used to be the their leader, leader of the SPLC or whatever they call him. But he's one of those people, you look at him, even if you didn't know who he was, and you just probably keep your kids a little closer to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it turned out that my radar going off was close on that one, or accurate on that one, and they took him out. He stopped being the leader, and they replaced him with another pedo-looking dude.
Oh boy!
Actually, the first radio show I used to be, the first radio show I ever was on, we called it Sovereign Citizens, just to be thrown into SPLC's face.
Okay.
And then we changed it to Northern Prosperity Law Center, so kind of slapped in their face. Yeah, anyways. And you can still look it up.
That's cool.
Every once in a while we come out with
That's great.
some audio. But in considerably more radical light, this May, Brulweiler was charged with 3 counts of making threats and 1 of willful disobedience. I guess disobedience is always willful, but of a court order. Court documents suggest that the alleged threats were made against a law enforcement or court official, but do not further spell out the charges. And they don't even quote or say anything that he actually said, and they don't disseminate that. I don't. More to the point, perhaps, Brulweiler turns out to be deeply enmeshed in the so-called sovereign citizens movement, right-wing radicals who believe that the government has no authority to impose laws or regulations on most Americans. Well, you wouldn't call yourself a citizen if you didn't think that. So earlier this year, We Are Change leader Radowski told the report that he started We Are Change to showcase patriot journalists. We Are Change original obsession with the 9/11 conspiracy theory is still the group's bread and butter, that originated both on the political right and the political left. We Are Change says it rejects the fear-based politics and state-mandated propaganda being disseminated by the corporate media, which has facilitated the cover-up of 9/11. I mean, they did that day one. I mean, with Building 7 in the background still standing as they said it fell. But over time, We Are Change has taken up several additional conspiracies, specifically to the radical right. Today, the group's website frets about a looming one world order and says it seeks to uncover the truth behind the private banking cartel of the military-industrial complex. That
these are conspiracies? I mean, the military-industrial complex is... Wasn't it Johnson? Eisenhower, who spoke publicly about that at the end of his term or something like that? Hey,
Beware
look out.
the military-industrial complex.
This is a thing.
I mean, last week we were talking about Australia announcing a new world order, so is he far off?
Yeah, and then, of course, the Great Reset is the new, I think, the new terminology for New World Order.
Sure.
So the Australians are a little behind the times, I think.
I think they backpedaled on that a little bit, but I think they're going back to the New World Order term versus the Great Resets. And
depends who you ask.
Yeah, well, they pulled their website, I believe, and they pulled a lot of their videos. The Great Reset stuff.
No, they didn't pull their website.
Well, they pulled a lot of their videos that.
Really?
I remember that happening a few months ago.
Huh.
But yeah, it's just they also want to eliminate national sovereignty, right? The New World Order. Radowski now seems particularly worried about the alleged role in the supposed imminent New World Order of organizations such as the Bilderberg Group and the Trilateral Commission, which are real.
Yeah.
They are doing this.
Really don't want you to know what they're doing. They're having secret meetings. And
there's politicians there.
And there's a bunch of politicians and a bunch of corporate executives and very, very wealthy people that want to have secret meetings about things. What's that all about? You go to the Great Reset and you look at the people pimping this thing, and it's politicians and corporate CEOs pimping this.
Yep.
I guess one more thing I just want to say about this is that this Bruno guy from the LA chapter, he was thrown out of court for just mere showing facial expressions, and the judge just didn't like it, so he threw him out. And
I wonder what the status of his case is. Is there anything about that in this?
No, they don't.
Story?
They don't really disseminate this in the article.
If you got more to share, hang on. We'll continue here in moments. If you want to comment, whether it's on the Great Reset, We Are Change, so-called conspiracy, sovereign citizens, more coming up.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denzelo. France has cancelled a gala event at their embassy in Washington. The move comes after the US, UK and Australia announced a submarine deal without European consultations. Earlier on Thursday, the French Foreign Minister said that Australia had betrayed its relationship with France after the Australian Prime Minister said his country was scrapping a $65 billion deal with France to acquire nuclear-powered submarines. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
There's been some really strong language coming from the French government on Thursday after this announcement from Australia. Jean-Yves Le Drian, the French Foreign Minister, saying, "I'm very angry today and bitter. This is not something allies do to each other." It comes after Australia tore up the 2016 deal with France and French defence firm Naval Group to build 12 submarines, something that Australia now wants to do with the US and the UK instead. Ross Cullen, Paris.
Meanwhile, the European Union says it was not consulted about the plans, which came the day before the bloc announced its new Indo-Pacific strategy. Josep Borrell is the EU's top diplomat.
We've only just been made aware of the alliance, and certainly we weren't consulted. As High Representative for Security Policy for the European Union, I was not made aware. I assume such an arrangement has been worked on for a while, but we weren't part and parcel of it. This is a good opportunity to remind people of the importance of Indo-Pacific strategy that we ourselves are focused on, and make this strategy more important.
Authorities in Germany say they foiled an attack on a Jewish synagogue in the northwest of the country. A man has been arrested, with local media saying police believe explosives were being prepared as part of the plot. Southwest has become the latest US airline to start offering staff extra money to get vaccinated against COVID-19. It comes as the Delta variant has caused a new wave of coronavirus infections across the country. US correspondent Sarah Walton reports.
Delta, American and United Airlines have already made similar announcements. And now Southwest says staff that submit proof of vaccination by the 15th of November will get a bonus. The company is going a step further too, saying it will stop sick pay for any unvaccinated workers who have to quarantine with coronavirus. President Joe Biden has announced that coronavirus vaccinations will soon become mandatory at large private firms and federal organizations across the US. Republicans have threatened to sue the government, calling the decision unconstitutional.
The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate cut to global greenhouse gas emissions to prevent further irreversible damage to the environment. The comments were made at the launch of a new climate report and just days before world leaders gather for the annual United Nations General Assembly. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, catching up with the latest developments in Brazil, where President Jair Bolsonaro has gone to war with the country's Supreme Court, and specifically with one justice sitting on the court who is investigating corruption allegations against the Brazilian leader and two of his sons. President Bolsonaro says the justice himself should now be impeached, and millions of his supporters agree.
Bolsonaro has decided to call on his base and was able
able to have a number of protest rallies take place in major cities in the country.
Bob McMahon with the New York-based Council on Foreign Relations.
There were fears that this could spill over into violence and that Brazil's institutions, which have held fairly strong through a lot of the challenges that have come up recently, could start to weaken. That did not happen, and the institutional strength appears to be there. But there's a reason why Bolsonaro is called the Trump of the tropics. There's a lot of concern that, despite the passion of his base, is extremely unpopular according to many opinion surveys. Bolsonaro, who has increasingly sort of drawn doubts about next year's elections, that those elections he's already sort of damning them as faulty, that the country has electoral failings.
Regular listeners will know that the Brazilian president is also a COVID-19 denialist, accused of presiding over the collapse of the country's public healthcare system by refusing to acknowledge the threat the pandemic posed to the nation. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denzelo reporting.
For over 8 years, Gary Lightman has been the chief executive officer and guiding force behind tech company MediaMerge Incorporated. Lightman spoke to reporters this week about working his way up from his humble beginnings as a son of the previous CEO.
If you would have told me 10 years ago that I would someday be the CEO of my dad's company, I would have said, absolutely not. I mean, it feels like just yesterday that I started off as a senior executive at this company, and now I'm in charge of the place.
Lightman told reporters that he credits his continued success in business to a number of crucial moments in his career, including getting hired by his father's retirement, and a few lucky breaks in between.
I'm not going to lie to you, it was a lot of work. I was here for nearly 8 hours every day. Someone clearly saw my efforts and took notice. You know, a lot of young people ask for my advice, and I always say the same thing. Work hard, and it will lead to bigger and better things. That's what I tell my kids.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio with you tonight, you've got Ian,
Matt, and Joe.
Coming up, focusing on Los Angeles and the various different crackdowns on freedom. Things are getting a lot worse there. Of course, Gavin Newsom won his recall vote handily. And the delusional libertarians out there in California, and specifically in places like L.A., that still think they have a chance to change things. It's absolutely ridiculous. We can talk about the California cliques or gangs within the sheriff's department, which we have actually talked about before on one occasion here on Free Talk Live. There's an update on it from Rolling Stone magazine, of all places. We'll share that with you coming up here. Plus, an update on the Moors coming up. We were just talking about so-called sovereign citizens and how most of the groups that the leftist media, like the Southern Poverty Law Center, would label, and I would say that they would be insulting these people. They are essentially libeling them by calling them sovereign citizens because they don't use that terminology for themselves. In fact, the Moors, for instance, these are the guys that got arrested over the summertime in Massachusetts for driving with some weapons, basically. And now they're facing felony charges and a lot of time in prison. They have a page on their website where it's like frequently asked questions. No, we are not sovereign citizens. And they go into explaining why. And, of course, one of the reasons why people couldn't possibly be a sovereign citizen is because it's a contradiction in terminology. You cannot be a sovereign, which is a king, like the king of yourself, basically, and also be a citizen, which is essentially a subject, a person who...
A peasant.
Yeah, a citizen, the definition of citizen, and this is both a legal definition and a dictionary definition, is somebody who owes a duty of allegiance in return for an obligation of protection. So citizenship is an agreement. Citizenship says, I'll do what you tell me in return for you protecting me. That's what citizenship is.
So
I like
how
to
do
think
you,
it's voluntary too. Sorry, go ahead.
it costs like how much money to renounce your citizenship? In the
Thousands
United
of
States?
dollars.
Yeah, it's thousands and thousands of dollars.
At least. I know that when Roger Ver from Bitcoin.com, by the way, longtime sponsor of this show, and thank you to the folks over at Bitcoin.com for helping us out here on Free Talk Live. They got some amazing introductory information there. But Roger Ver, he renounced citizenship, and he didn't just have to pay the filing fee. It's like the filing fee and jumping through the legal hoops is a couple thousand at least, from what I understand. He had to pay 6 figures to the government because they claimed that he owed them for like income tax or something like that. So in order to renounce citizenship, he had to settle up first.
Oh.
Yeah. So in some cases, it can be way more expensive than just a couple $1,000s.
Sure.
Yeah. So we can talk more about the Moors and what they have to say coming up here in moments. But Joe, we were looking into that story from the Southern Poverty Law Center because I found myself wondering what happened to Bruno.
All right, so first of all, I apologize because I was searching on for Southern Poverty Law Center news, and that was one of the things that came up on my Google News, like as a top result, and
something that you presumed was happening now.
Yes. I do have more information about it. I just randomly was trying to find more information about Bruno. And
this is the leader of, or at least was, the leader of the We Are Change group in Los Angeles.
Correct. And so maybe this is just old news, but I think it's still important to bring up, I guess, is that he was arrested and they were trying to free him, and the website's down now. It was free-bruno.org. Yeah, I guess he was arrested on terrorist charges.
Well, that's what the article said, the SPLC story. They claimed he was making threats and 4 different charges. But this turns out it was actually back in 2010 when that happened. So it wasn't recent at all. And so that was the mistake that was made, was we thought it was a recent story, and it turns out it's a decade old, which made me think, all right, well, I still want to know what happened to the guy.
I also feel like that maybe with my attachment of my device maybe brought this article up for me, because it was just literally I just searched Southern Poverty Law Center on the news to try to find something interesting, because they always come up with these crazy things, and it just kind of maybe pushed a We Are Change article up on me. That's literally what happened when I was looking things up earlier.
Yeah, I don't know, but still, the point is, I want to know what happened to the guy, because he's we don't know anything about the case, and even Southern Poverty Law Center didn't put any information in there. They just put in there the claim that he'd been arrested. And when you look up his name, Bruno Broweiler, spelled Bruhwiler, there's a ton of posts from June, July of 2010, which was when he caught around when he got the charges. And I can't find anything about, if you search for Bruno Broweiler convicted, or Bruno Broweiler pled guilty or pleads guilty, nothing comes up.
Right.
So, the case, it's gone down the memory hole. I mean, I presume people in Los Angeles probably know what happened to him, and maybe they don't have a blog or something like that. I mean,
I'll ask Luke and see what's up with it.
Yeah, see what happened to the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he's sitting in prison somewhere right now.
I mean, this was terror. They would get him for terrorist threats.
Yeah. Although, if a lot of times with federal charges, they offer you a guilty plea, and then you're in and out of prison after a few years or
maybe
whatever.
You can't even talk about it, too.
It could be. I was talking about this earlier today. Was I think I heard Ross Ulbricht was offered 10 years plea deal prior to the trial, and if he had taken it, he'd be out in 2 years.
Yeah.
And now instead he's in for the rest of his life. So.
That's sad.
Who knows what happened with this other guy? It is sad. I mean, it's sad that the federal government will punish you, and it's also true of state governments. If you don't take the plea deal and you get convicted, they throw the book at you in a lot of cases.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Essentially, he eliminated criminal activity, which implies there's victims. He essentially removed.
Ross did, you mean?
Yeah, he removed that element in this, in the world of. I'm not saying he was a drug dealer. I'm just saying that he was running a website.
He did.
Right.
Although he was allegedly selling mushrooms from the Silk Road in the very early days. So technically he was a quote-unquote drug dealer, but one of the safest possible drugs that you could possibly purchase.
Yeah. That's a pretty softball thing to be peddling there.
Yeah, right. Even magic mushrooms are actually being decriminalized in some places, because finally people are acknowledging that these things can actually help cure people of things like PTSD.
Yeah. But we know it had nothing to do with drug sales on the internet. It had everything to do with the acceptance of Bitcoin as a currency in the outset.
That was a factor. It also had to do with they wanted to, quote unquote, send a message.
Yeah.
They wanted to let other people know that if they try the same thing, they're going to be facing, similar convictions. But actually, that's not true. The guy who got convicted for running Silk Road 2.0, he got a slap on the hand by comparison.
Well, this is basically Silk Road is threatening the industrial prison complex, and that's a huge moneymaker. So government really doesn't like to have their moneymakers threatened.
So if you know what happened with We Are Change leader from Los Angeles from a decade ago, Bruno Breuweiler, feel free to give us a call here. Our number is 603-283-6160. In related news, this story from Rolling Stone, Tim Dickinson reporting a new report finds efforts to clean up the decades-old gang culture within the Sheriff's Department in Los Angeles are, here's a surprise, failing. So the government police cannot even police their own police.
We internally investigated and found no wrongdoings.
Well, they know that there's wrongdoing because there's known gangs within the gang, right? Because we see clearly what the police are. It's a criminal gang. It's a criminal enterprise.
The police don't see themselves as a criminal gang.
No. They see themselves as the heroes, the thin blue line between anarchy or between chaos and society or whatever.
Civilization.
Right. According to the story, at least 4 secret cliques or gangs of sheriff's deputies with names like the Banditos and the Executioners. That's a nice name for a group of cops.
Officer friendly.
Yeah. Continue to operate and recruit within the LA County Sheriff's Department, despite recent reforms intended to ban them. The persistence of illicit factions is described in a new report commissioned by the LA County that rebukes a department that, quote, either can't or won't, unquote, manage a problem that is undermining the legitimacy of the law enforcement agency. Well, let me tell you, y'all's legitimacy was undermined long before the executioners or banditos were made public. But we will continue here in moments, and you can share your thoughts. Here's a shocker. People who want to use violence are actually attracted to an agency where that's the rule.
Who'd have thunk?
Huh. Wow. About that. Yeah, there's more coming up here. I'm sure it's only a problem in Los Angeles, right?
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever you want here. Trying to dig in and find out what happened to the Los Angeles We Are Change organizer who was facing apparently a terrorist charge, terrorist threatening or something like that. We've found a little bit more information here. We'll share that with you in just a moment. And I do want to say again, check out Bitcoin.com. I mentioned them briefly in the last segment, but I didn't tell you that what they've got there, amongst other things, is a getting started section. So if you or somebody you know is interested in getting into cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash. By the way, Bitcoin earlier today I think was over $48,000 per Bitcoin. It's been kind of floating around there for a little while. 47,700 right now. You can go to bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top, and then that'll take you to some introductory videos, one of which, the very first one, is like 3 minutes long. So you don't have to spend a lot of time to get the basics on what it is that makes cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash different and special, and why you ought to be involved and interested in it. So again, bitcoin.com. If you aren't new to crypto, you can go and get the latest news headlines from bitcoin.com. Just go to news.bitcoin.com. They've got them there every single day, updated fresh over at bitcoin.com. All right, so Ian, Matt, and Joe are here in the studio tonight. I pulled up the Wayback Machine, which has to be one of the most useful tools on the web.
A little bit of genius there that stood the test of time.
Yeah, if you don't know about it, go to archive.org, and you can go into the Wayback Machine, put in any web URL that you want to, and there's a good chance, it's not 100%, but it's like probably 90+% chance that the website you want to see, it's got snapshots of that site from the past, basically. And this thing can go back as far as, I think, the early aughts, if not late 90s. I'm not sure when. I think it was like 1999 or something when they started the Wayback Machine. So if the website was around back then, they probably have an image.
A copy of it.
Yeah. And now it's not usually a complete copy. So, for instance, I'm right now on free-bruno.org. We were looking at Bruno Broweiler, the then, back in 2010, lead organizer for We Are Change Los Angeles. And we wanted to know what happened to him because we'd heard he'd gotten targeted for so-called terrorist threat charges. And we're looking to see, did he get convicted? Was there a plea deal? What's going on? Is he in prison right now? Is he out? We can't find anything about him.
It's just ghosted.
Now, you're reaching out, Joa, to the current chairperson over there, the current organizer of We Are Change LA, but the We Are Change LA website is gone right now, or at least what it was back then is no longer there, and free-bruno.org is gone, but again, they exist on the Internet Archive. And so going back to 2010, in June. There's one of the snapshots, and it's got We Are Change LA organizer faces terrorist charge. So from free-bruno.org in 2010. Again, the site doesn't exist anymore and hasn't for many years. But I just want to read what their side of the story is, because we know what the Southern Poverty Law Center said. And here's what We Are Change LA said. Their lead organizer, Bruno Broweiler, is being targeted as a terrorist threat. It all began when Bruno was sitting in the audience at a civil hearing for another member of We Are Change Los Angeles. The judge literally didn't like Bruno's involuntary facial expressions and ordered him out of the courtroom. And this is something that you and I, we've all been in. Like, we've all been in other people's court hearings.
Sure.
We've all seen judges acting crazy and being little tyrants. So we can relate.
I remember when someone was imprisoned for a hat.
Oh, yeah. I remember when that happened more than once here in Keene, New Hampshire.
I also remember having drinking games in the courtroom every time someone said this, then drink.
That wasn't in the courtroom. That was the city council.
Oh, city council.
Not to change the subject, but I might go to jail for a parking ticket Monday.
I'll be there. Or at least I hope so. I still have to talk to my probation guy tomorrow.
But I have it on my schedule.
I expect he'll let me go because he let me go to the trial in Concord. So why wouldn't he let me go to this one? He was detained in the hall after. So again, he did leave the courtroom when the judge demanded. Was then detained in the hall after asking to see officers' ID cards before he left the building. They are required, according to their own manual, to provide ID upon request, but apparently don't like to be asked for it. When the supervising officer ordered Bruno to turn around and put his hands behind his back, Bruno instantly turned around and put his hands behind his back with absolutely no resistance. At first, he was supposedly being detained for trespassing in a public courthouse, which is a misdemeanor in Los Angeles. But of course, you can't trespass on public property, so they dropped the trespassing charge, then told him he was being detained for a public disturbance. About an hour later, when the supervisor actually placed Bruno under arrest, the original charge was changed to a misdemeanor contempt of court. None of the witnesses present heard the judge mention anything about contempt when asking him to leave. And usually when you get hit with contempt, or direct criminal contempt, it has to be because you're in the courtroom doing something against what the judge is saying, and the judge usually has to say, you're under arrest for contempt. Yeah.
Essentially, you have to be disrupting the court. Like,
correct.
Facial expressions is just like, I guess, like, what, are you supposed to be, like, just totally, like, mute into your emotions? Like, I think you should have some sort of emotions.
I think that you should as well. But we also know that judges can do whatever they want. It's like their own little kingdom.
Right. They're sovereign citizens.
Yeah. 2 felony resisting arrest charges were then tacked on, which means Bruno is charged with physically resisting the officers twice. Though witnesses observed Bruno didn't ever resist the officers. The arresting supervisor claimed that Bruno threatened to assassinate him. Then the same officer ordered an underling to back up his claim as a false witness and charged Bruno with making a terrorist threat.
Wow.
After 9/11, legislation was passed making it very easy to charge ordinary citizens as terrorists for almost any reason. They're calling him a potential cop killer. We're talking about Bruno, a man who raises money for 9/11 first responders and the Feel Good Foundation. He's also a member of Southern California Oath Keepers and the initiator of Talk to a Cop Wednesdays, an outreach effort to befriend and educate law enforcement throughout Los Angeles. We're talking about a man committed to nonviolent change, peace, and social justice. Yes, that Bruno. While in custody at another location for incarceration, Bruno was asked by an officer if he was the lead organizer of We Are Change Los Angeles, and the officer asked with a snide tone if Bruno had a website with other officers looking on. Either they did some quick research on him, or they recognized Bruno from some other method, but they knew he was the lead organizer of We Are Change LA. The mention of it made it abundantly clear that he is being targeted for who he is. This is about all of us. This is about freedom. The struggle for Bruno's freedom is a microcosm of what is happening all across the United States. We cannot allow We Are Change leaders to be labeled and targeted as terrorists. It can easily be ascertained that Bruno is being railroaded through procedures.
So someone who's trying to bridge the gap between police and the public,
right? He's a criminal.
Yeah. He needs to be held example.
Got to put a stop to him.
Yeah, we can't have that. We can't have a class society of people abusing the public so they can make a living and feed their families. No. We have to make sure that we divide that gap further.
So that's basically the story there on Bruno. And again, this was posted in the summer of 2010, which was around the time when he was arrested for this.
Sorry, I was 10 10 years off.
Dude, no problem, man. It happens. It happens to all of us.
Inched it.
It's good to revisit things sometimes, though. You
and
gotta
especially
find
if we don't know what happened.
Yeah, and I do want to know, like, is this guy okay? What happened to this guy? Right now, there's nothing. This is in the memory hole. There is nothing online about what happened to Bruno Breuwiler.
Did we just stumble across a disappearing?
Well, I mean, people knew about it. They were talking about it. They were bringing attention to it. Just
someone
there
at the
wasn't
Google
any follow-up.
headquarters made me find this article.
Yeah, maybe so. All right, the number here, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We'll get back into the Los Angeles police coming up here in moments. Get the gang members in the LAPD. This is Free Talk Live.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. If you'd like to see real prosperity, start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, its impact's hard to overstate. Results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great. Homelessness and hunger to eliminate. Let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States has defended its new military alliance with Australia and the United Kingdom following an international diplomatic backlash. The three-way AUKUS agreement will allow Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines using US and UK technology. But the security alliance has angered China. Beijing sees it as an effort to counter its claims in the South China Sea, and it's caused problems with US ally France. As Nick Harper reports from Washington.
It was a day of being on the defence about the new defence alliance. The US, UK and Australia heralded it as a historic opportunity, but France felt particularly cold-shouldered, losing out on a $66 billion deal to build Australia's submarines. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken tried to calm the waters of international diplomacy.
There is no regional divide separating the interests of our Atlantic and our Pacific partners. This partnership with Australia and the United Kingdom is a signal that we're committed to working with our allies and partners, including in Europe.
The White House says France was warned about the alliance before it was announced.
Southwest has become the latest US airline to start offering staff extra money to be vaccinated against COVID-19. It comes as the Delta variant has caused a new wave of coronavirus infections across the country. US correspondent Rachel Silverman has the details.
Southwest says it will offer extra pay to staff who show proof of full vaccination by mid-November, pay equal to about 2 extra days of work. The airline also says it will stop sick pay for unvaccinated workers who have to quarantine with COVID-19. The U.S. Department of Labor is set to make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory at larger private firms and federal employers in the coming weeks, affecting up to 100 million U.S. workers. Rachel Silverman, Oakland.
Global online retailer ASOS has set out a series of environmental and social targets, which include achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2030. It comes after Primark made a similar announcement on Wednesday, promising to halve its carbon emissions by the same date. Aisling Taylor reports from London.
The global retailer made over £1,000 million worth of sales in the EU last year, but has faced criticism over its impact on the environment. The goals include reducing emissions in the production and distribution of products, as well as ensuring 50% female and 15% ethnic minority representation in leadership positions by 2030. But critics claim lack of transparency means the company's progress will be difficult to monitor. Aisling Taylor, London.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. The number, if you want to join us here, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here with you tonight, it's Ian,
Matt, and Joa.
And don't forget, we are streaming on Odyssey, which is a website based on the LBRY protocol. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol. Joa, you've got a channel up there on Odyssey and LBRY. How do people find it?
Just search for Breaking the Flaw.
And they will find you doing all manner of cop block and going into government buildings with a video camera and seeing what they do.
Yeah.
Pretty fun stuff. Check out Breaking the Flaw on Odyssey. Also, our channel there, you can just easily access it by going to video.freetalklive.com. We want to move as many of our video viewers over to Odyssey as possible because while we may be on YouTube at this moment, that can change in an instant. They let us back on a week or two ago, and then after a week of being back on, we were taken down again with another strike on the channel for quote-unquote medical misinformation, which that means having people on the air that have differing opinions about the official establishment opinion about COVID and such. And so all they have to do is give us 3 strikes, and then the channel is gone forever. So, we don't know how much longer the YouTube channel is going to last. So again, all y'all watching on YouTube, and I do appreciate there's a lot of people commenting on YouTube, so there's still people there, but you guys gotta get off of that platform.
Yeah. Here's something. I just opened up Odyssey. By the way, it's Odyssey, Odyssee.
Correct. Yeah, that's why I always give out video.freetalklive.com, just because you don't have to spell it for people. But yeah, I don't guess they couldn't have gotten the regular spelling of it.
Right.
It's one of those internet things.
It's becoming very common. People know what it is now, and
it's a top 1,500 website now.
Really?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Way to go, guys.
Yeah, according to Alexa, and that was actually a few weeks ago, so it may be
right in the top
that.
row. Right in the top row of videos I'm seeing when I go to the main Odyssey page is something that absolutely would never be on YouTube. From YouTube.
What is it?
As of a couple years ago, smooth your ABS and ASA parts with acetone. They're talking about building 80% 3D printed.
Oh wow.
Gun parts.
Nice.
Okay, so it's no longer top 1,500, but it's 1,630 according to the Alexa ranking.
That's great.
It was, a couple months ago, it was in the 2,000 range or 2,500 range. So it's been moving up the charts. There's more people that are checking out Odyssey. There's more people that are moving over their channels from YouTube, which is what both you and I did, Joa. The Free Keen channel there. Now, I don't have near the subscribers on Odyssey because even though it's not new, like we've been on Odyssey for years now, the Free Keen channel and the Free Talk Live channel, but it's still new to the audience. People out there still need to get into the habit of using it because it's hard to break old habits.
If you give the wrong facial expressions like Bruno did, you might get kicked off of YouTube.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I was actually worried recently that YouTube was going to pull a couple of my videos because
that's happened before to you, hasn't it?
It has, for displaying firearms. But I actually am going out there with my firearm. And
how dare you exercise your rights?
Oh God, yeah. But no, the cops were looking for someone with a firearm while I'm asking them for names and badge numbers with my firearm.
Sure,
not openly.
I mean, it's
openly displayed, but I'm not like brandishing. I'm just and
that's common in New Hampshire. I mean, that's not like most cops won't bat an eye in New Hampshire at somebody walking around open carrying.
No, actually, a few of them have appreciated that I'm exercising my rights.
That does happen here.
They've expressed that.
They'll come up to you and they'll show what seems like a more genuine interest than you would normally get from a cop.
Yeah.
And like, hey man, what you carrying? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got pulled over and they arrested me for not having a valid driver's license at the time. It was back in 2015.
In New Hampshire.
Yeah, and I was on my way to PorcFest. And every year at PorcFest, we do the newbie shoot. So I always bring hardware for people to try out. Maybe we teach them on the 22s. And if you want to step up and try out an AK or an AR-15, you can do it. So I had a trunk full of AKs and AR-15s. And I had a, me, just doing my Matt thing. And just how I roll. So in my beat up Honda Civic. So I had on my hip, I had an HK VP9. On the passenger seat, I had in a holster my Walther PPQ. And those at the time
and you had a concealed carry permit at the time?
Yes.
Because I don't think we had the...
no constitutional carry then, yeah. Right. So I must have.
Yeah.
So I got pulled over, and the cop's like, there's a gun on your passenger seat. I said, there sure is. I was like, that's a fine observation. And when he finally ended up taking me out of the car, as they do it for their safety and so forth, he just found all my guns, and he's like, he's like, what do you do for a living? He's like, this is an HKVP9. And this is when they first came out, and these are hard to get, and everybody wants one. And I had one, and I also had the other one that was the competitor to it. And so when we went back to the station, they let me out they didn't put me in a cell or anything. And they all wanted to talk about guns with me.
Yeah.
And they weren't fishing. They were honestly, I was like, if you guys quit your jobs, I'll let you shoot all these.
Yeah.
What happened with the charge?
I ended up paying a ticket on it.
Oh, boo. You paid them?
No, I pled not guilty, and they railroaded me anyway. Ended up paying for it.
Never pay the gang.
Well, they're never. I needed to get a license.
Sit in jail.
Yeah, you can always sit it off in jail at $150 a day.
If
here in New Hampshire.
If it's any consolation, I didn't have a license for like 12 years, and I successfully did beat a driver's license ticket in New York State before I moved to New Hampshire.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, by the way, just for listeners that don't know, if you don't pay a fine, at least here in New Hampshire, I can't speak to what it's like in other states, but at least here in New Hampshire, if you don't pay the fine, if you get convicted, you go to trial. So you've got a parking ticket trial coming up on Monday, and they say you're guilty, $10 or whatever the amount is at this point, because the tickets do go up if you don't challenge them quickly.
Sure.
Is yours still at 10?
I think it's at 30.
Okay, so yours went up a little bit. Yeah. So $30, guilty. Would you like to pay at the window? And then all you have to do is just say, no, I'd rather go to jail.
Yeah.
And then what they'll do at that point, almost every time, is they'll say, how about we give you community service instead of jail?
Nope.
Oh, see, most people would take the community service, because normally if you ask them for community service, like if they say, all right, you're guilty, $30, you say, well, Judge, can I have community service? Then what they do is they say, you need to fill out our financial affidavit, and then they want to know about your bank accounts. They want to know about if you have a house and what your car is and all that information.
Suddenly it doesn't matter anymore when you want it.
But if you're willing to go to jail, they never ask you for the financial affidavit.
Interesting.
Then they want you to take the community service, because they don't want to send somebody to jail in front of a courtroom full of people for a parking ticket.
If they offer me community service, you know what I'm going to say? Sorry, I don't negotiate with terrorists.
This is gonna
and
be
I've
good.
said this before in court.
This is going to be good. Is this your first New Hampshire trial?
Yeah, I think so.
Because you've been arrested in a few different places during your varied career of doing auditing. But
I am probably a couple of weeks away from a settlement.
Where is that one? In
Manchester.
Worcester? Oh, Manchester.
Yeah.
That was
Worcester one's still in litigation.
Now, Manchester was where you and one of the sticker pimps got
Savage
roughed up,
2603.
right?
Yeah.
What happened with that?
Well, I mean, I'm really not supposed to talk about it too much, but I will say that when they review these body cams, I hope the other charge on Savage gets dropped.
Good.
Because,
that would be great.
yeah, it's
so he's still facing a charge?
He's resisting. But all the other charges have been dropped. That's the only one that's been stuck around, because it's one of those charges that they just do not like to get rid of, because once they put that on you.
It's BS, though. I mean, they've done this so many times where they charge an activist with quote-unquote resisting and nothing else. How can you be resisting what was otherwise an illegal arrest?
Yeah. I don't want to speak for Savage, but I have the body cam footage, and they were telling him, put your hands behind the back, and his hands were already behind his back. Stop resisting. He ain't resisting.
Yeah.
I can imagine when they review this footage, they're going to drop that charge on him.
Yeah, well, I haven't even seen the body cam footage, but I saw the other footage that you guys all recorded.
Yeah.
It was, I think, Vincent. Was it Vincent that put that one together? I think I had Vincent. I just didn't have enough time, and I had Vincent cut together a multicam of that. So I think you had video. I think Savage had his camera there, and I think the other gentleman that was there had that. Yeah, if you go to the Free Keen Odyssey channel and you look like just before the raid in March, I think it is right around when that happened.
Yeah,
and that video is there. And it was pretty clear that the cops were the aggressors in that case. It was absolutely ridiculous. So more coming up here. Speaking of aggressive cops, Los Angeles County Police. Well, we all know that they're a gang because they're the police. Turns out there's gangs within the gang. More coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
When you're coping with bad news and the news media come calling, and they will, don't clam up. As notorious political figures find out the hard way, the cover-up can be worse than the crime. So get out in front of unfavorable news about your company, your group, or organization, or yourself. The sooner you confront a negative story, the sooner it will be over. Responding as quickly to negative stories as you do to positive ones enhances your credibility. Hiding embarrassing information or lying will do more damage than damage control. Never stonewall. Tell your side of the story, use specifics, and detail what corrective action has already been taken. Respond in kind. If the issue is emotional, don't sound like a cold, unemotional Mr. Spock. For more tips on critical communication skills for the way things are now, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
I had a turning point in my life that happened right here on the air on Free Talk Live. A veteran, a guy who had served like 20 years in the military in both the Navy and the Army, called in and he asked me to rebut the statement. The military are a bunch of paid killers working for liars and thieves in Washington, D.C. Now, when you're stuck here on the air, you're on live radio. There's nowhere to go. You can't excuse yourself to go to the bathroom. You can't change the subject. You're a talk show host who has built their reputation on honesty and logic. What are you going to do when somebody says that to you? Well, when you don't have an answer to something, you're going to have to look really hard at the other side's opinion. And that's what I was left doing.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, you can join us here if you want. Number 603-283-6160. You can take control of the airwaves. Bring up whatever is on your mind. By the way, I want to say thank you to Pizza Cake Man, who is a silver amplifier. That means Pizza Cake Man is contributing $5 a month to the AMP program. And definitely appreciate that, man. The AMP program means advertise, market, and promote. It's a way for you to help us get Free Talk Live onto more radio stations, to bring more internet listeners on board with the ideas of freedom and liberty. We're talking about them 7 nights per week, live on the radio on over 180 great radio stations across the country. We could have more than that. It just takes time, takes effort, takes money. And so Pizza Cake Man helping out with that, $5 a month. He's a silver amplifier. You can do that too and get some cool perks over at amp.freetalklive.com, amp.freetalklive.com. We're talking about a study, apparently, that was done by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and they're trying to rid themselves of subgangs. So gangs within the gang, gangs within the police department of Los Angeles County. Gangs calling themselves names like the Banditos and Executioners, according to the story here at Rolling Stone magazine. We actually covered something about these guys a couple years ago, or within the last couple of years. This isn't the first time we've talked about this, but the news here is that despite efforts to try to rid the department of these gangs, they have failed.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a shocker, huh? They apparently hired the Rand Corporation. The county government did.
That's military-industrial complex stuff, isn't it? Rand
Is that right? I don't know.
Another gang?
The report they came up with draws on an unprecedented survey on the department's roughly 10,000 sworn personnel and reveals that nearly 1 out of 6 deputies have been invited to join a subgroup, a quarter of those within the past 5 years. The report opts for neutral language of subgroups and cliques, but recognizes that critics have long decried these factions as gangs, pointing to pervasive initiation rituals, tattoos, hand signs, and the group's often violent behavior. Since 1990, the county's paid out nearly $55 million in, quote, subgroup-related judgments, unquote, including $21 million in the past decade alone. In 2019, for example, they paid $7 million to settle a wrongful death claim by the family of a man shot and killed by a deputy with an executioner's tattoo. The report identifies 4 subgroups by the name as currently active, each operating within a different geographic station. So they have got territories, these gangs, within Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. The Banditos of Eastern Los Angeles Station, the Reapers of South Los Angeles, the Spartans of Century Station, and the Executioners of Compton. Underscoring how ingrained such cliques are within the culture of the department, the report also names 8 other subgroups, including the Cavemen, the Jump Out Boys, and the Regulators, that no longer actively recruit new deputies, but whose aging members remain on the county payroll. Quote, I can't say whether the Regulators or Vikings or Banditos are a criminal street gang, but they're close to it, said one survey respondent who identified obliquely as a county stakeholder representative. The person continued, saying, the reason you can't answer that is it's never been investigated. The culture is so pervasive within the department. There are many people who are in places of management that may have been part of the same cliques or precursors of them. So
maybe sometimes it's not voluntary either. I'm just going to play devil's advocate that maybe they're just being threatened. They have something held over their head.
You have to join.
Yeah. And if they're investigating these gangs and they really just, can't really do anything about it, it's probably because they're either part of it or they're being threatened to not speak up about it.
Right. And how can you investigate a gang if the higher-ups in the department are members of the gang as well? So they're all playing cover-up.
Oh, yeah. It'd be fascinating to know if like the gang leaders are on the lower scale of things, but they have their minions
members
at
the higher.
Yeah,
I've said for a long time that if we started having full scale anarchy tomorrow, government came to an end, somebody pulled the magic lever and it all went away. All of those people who are for government, especially the police, would immediately turn to crime. Absolute. That's all they know how. They're parasitic by nature.
Well, look, I don't know if all of them would. Like the guys that lay down salt during the wintertime, I think they would just get hired
to throw down salt during the wintertime.
I don't think they're going to turn to crime. There's some government guys that they do actually perform a service, and the marketplace would demand those services.
The marketplace still, and there are a lot of cops who would probably become security type people,
or investigators, private investigators.
But would they? Private investigators totally useful. It's arbitration is going to be useful, things like that. But a lot of them would be liabilities for their violent tendencies and would not be hired, and they would just be or not kept anyway. They could, lawsuits could occur if malfeasance was.
I hope someday we get to encounter these problems.
I hope so too.
I like to think that if there's any good cops out there, that if you eliminate these government systems of protections, that you end up seeing the good people and these forces actually rise up and actually end up having an effect.
Right, because in a marketplace for defense, in a marketplace for protection, the good ones are going to get the business. The ones that are honest.
Yeah.
The ones that'll actually help an old lady on the side of the road or whatever, right?
Yeah,
like
but
the
if
ones
you're making moves on my 16-year-old daughter because she's driving after 9, I'm not going to hire you later on.
The RAND report emphasizes that not all subgroups are created equal, and that the more benign ones may operate more like drinking groups. But it calls out one in particular as a paragon of bad behavior, the Bandidos. They're a menace, apparently, to their non-click colleagues. The report describes alleged workplace harassment, incivility, intimidation, and retaliation leading to brawls in the parking lot. These claims echo findings of a 2020 County Inspector General report that called out the group, writing, quote, substantial evidence exists to support the conclusion that the Bandidos are gang-like and their influence has resulted in favoritism, sexism, racism, and violence. An ongoing lawsuit filed in 2019 by the department deputies describes the Bandidos as a illegal, racist, and sexist criminal organization and alleges the group has violated its colleagues' civil rights by, quote, assaulting and attacking them directly at several locations and put their life and limb at risk by withholding backup on dangerous calls. So if you're not with the Bandidos, their members won't show up to back you up if you have a
So wait. How do we throw gas on this fire?
Well, so far they haven't been able to put it out. So
what can I do?
Yeah, that's what this story is about.
What's my part?
The helplessness of the police department to do anything about this.
True,
because they're paying these people their salaries, and they're so prevalent that they can't. If it was one guy in the department, if you got 100 people in the department and one guy is going around trying to threaten people, it's easy to get rid of him.
Right.
But if 60 or 70 of the 100 people are with the gang, and there's only 20 or 30 people that are like, hey, we need to get rid of this gang, well, you're not getting rid of the gang.
It's like a union in a microcosm.
They own the department.
I mean, I've been saying for a long time that the FOP, all these fraternal order of police, these little like cliquey clubs that they have, those are essentially gangs. Like they become way more friends and everything like that. And supposedly these places are public, that they allow the public to go in and be interesting.
What places?
FOP clubs.
Their meetings?
Not the meetings per se, but like the establishments.
Really?
That you should be able to go in there and order a drink.
I'd be shocked if that were the case.
Well, I've actually been in a couple.
Really?
Yeah, for parties and because you can rent the halls and.
Oh, renting. Okay.
But I mean, you should be able to just go in just like the Elks Club, like.
Yeah, but the Elks Club won't serve non-members.
Well, you're paying a lot more. Yeah, you can.
At the Elks Club?
I've been to Elks Clubs.
Really? Yeah. You don't have to be with a member? You can just walk into an Elks Club and they'll serve
Usually
you?
they don't deny you. Like they wouldn't just they could, I guess. I mean.
Huh. Okay. I didn't know that was how it worked. I thought you had to be a member to get, because like they let their bars stay open late because it's members only.
I've gone in without membership.
Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe they just think you're with somebody.
Yeah, because isn't that like one of the things with the Elks Club is like they can run their bar at different times than normally legal because it's a private club?
I guess just walk in with some confidence.
It helps.
Yeah, I'm here with Dave.
Helps.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right.
Which Dave?
You guys know me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just telling you what I've done, guys. I don't know.
Yeah, you're supposed to be here like 10 minutes ago. I'm just, I'll take a gin and tonic.
Oh, I got totally overcharged once at a American Legion. Like I walked into one and they were like, "Yeah, it's $10 for that Budweiser." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Wow.
And then the guy that's actually part of the club was like $1.
I'll put it on Dave's tab.
Okay.
Just put it on Dave's tab.
We actually did an event called Halloween at the Elks Club here in town. And it was great. They were good.
Okay.
They were good to us. The affordable rates to rent the place, and they were decent. No real crazy rules or anything like that.
Sure. Okay.
So again, what do you do about this? Well, the best thing you can do, I think, is move to New Hampshire. Get the hell out of Los Angeles. I mean, again, we still have gangs. They're called the police. But our cop departments here aren't big enough. There's 10,000 people in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department.
That's insane.
Here in New Hampshire, Keene, New Hampshire, where we live, there's like 40-plus uniformed officers and then, some number of dozen ununiformed office staff.
I saw 3 New Hampshire State Trooper vehicles today within 30 seconds, and I think it's just something was going on. They were meeting, but you never see that.
There's just a little bit more accountability here.
Yeah.
We're coming up.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States has defended its new military alliance with Australia and the United Kingdom following an international diplomatic backlash. The three-way AUKUS agreement will allow Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines using US and UK technology. But the security alliance has angered China. Beijing sees it as an effort to counter its claims in the South China Sea, and it's caused problems with US ally France. As Nick Harper reports from Washington.
It was a day of being on the defence about the new defence alliance. The US, UK and Australia heralded it as a historic opportunity, but France felt particularly cold-shouldered, losing out on a $66 billion deal to build Australia's submarines. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken tried to calm the waters of international diplomacy.
There is no regional divide separating the interests of our Atlantic and our Pacific partners. This partnership with Australia and the United Kingdom is a signal that we're committed to working with our allies and partners, including in Europe.
The White House says France was warned about the alliance before it was announced.
Southwest has become the latest US airline to start offering staff extra money to be vaccinated against COVID-19. It comes as the Delta variant has caused a new wave of coronavirus infections across the country. US correspondent Rachel Silverman has the details.
Southwest says it will offer extra pay to staff who show proof of full vaccination by mid-November, pay equal to about 2 extra days of work. The airline also says it will stop sick pay for unvaccinated workers who have to quarantine with COVID-19. The U.S. Department of Labor is set to make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory at larger private firms and federal employers in the coming weeks, affecting up to 100 million U.S. workers. Rachel Silverman, Oakland.
Global online retailer ASOS has set out a series of environmental and social targets, which include achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2030. It comes after Primark made a similar announcement on Wednesday, promising to halve its carbon emissions by the same date. Aisling Taylor reports from London.
The global retailer made over £1,000 million worth of sales in the EU last year, but has faced criticism over its impact on the environment. The goals include reducing emissions in the production and distribution of products, as well as ensuring 50% female and 15% ethnic minority representation in leadership positions by 2030. But critics claim lack of transparency means the company's progress will be difficult to monitor. Aisling Taylor, London.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, catching up with the latest developments in Brazil, where President Jair Bolsonaro has gone to war with the country's Supreme Court, and specifically with one justice sitting on the court who is investigating corruption allegations against the Brazilian leader and two of his sons. President Bolsonaro says the justice himself should now be impeached, and millions of his supporters agree.
Bolsonaro has decided to call on his base and was able to have a number of protest rallies take place in major cities in the country.
Bob McMahon with the New York-based Council on Foreign Relations.
There were fears that this could spill over into violence and that Brazil's institutions, which have held fairly strong through a lot of the challenges that have come up recently, could start to weaken. That did not happen, and the institutional strength appears to be there. But there's a reason why Bolsonaro is called the Trump of the tropics. There's a lot of concern that despite the passion of his base, is extremely unpopular according to many opinion surveys. Bolsonaro, who has increasingly sort of drawn doubts about next year's elections, that those elections are already, he's already sort of damning them as faulty, that the country has electoral failings.
Regular listeners will know that the Brazilian president is also a COVID-19 denialist, accused of presiding over the collapse of the country's public healthcare system by refusing to acknowledge the threat the pandemic posed to the nation. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The US has defended its new military alliance with Australia and the UK following an international diplomatic backlash. Southwest has become the latest US airline to start offering staff extra money to be vaccinated against COVID-19. And global online retailer ASOS says it will achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2030.
Congress today passed a landmark Social Security reform bill they estimate could save the troubled program billions. The so-called Grab Life by the Balls bill includes provisions to cut the cost of cigarettes in half, outlaws helmets, and adjusts the CDC's recommended amount of sleep from 8 hours a night to when you're dead. The bill's short-term initiatives aim to immediately cut Social Security costs in half by replacing senior citizens' monthly checks with vouchers for grain, alcohol, and extreme sports.
I got this coupon to motocross over a canyon. Better do my part to help the deficit.
Supporters in Congress say the cost will be offset by the so-called pussy tax on products such as sweaters, vegetables, hand soap, and flu shots.
America, would you rather die old, broke, and forgotten, or die a mother-f***ing legend?
The new program follows in the footsteps of the Life is a Cartoon Medicare campaign, which encourages seniors to run full speed off of cliffs and smoke sticks of dynamite.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up what you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Your cops are acting like gang members? What do you do about that? We can talk about that discussion here in a little bit more. Of course, your calls and thoughts are welcome. In the studio with you tonight, it's Ian,
Matt, and Joa.
And plus, we never really got into the story about Jim Brewer, and I do think it's worth discussing, giving that guy some serious props for what he's standing up, and he's taking a financial hit. He's canceling venues that are requiring vaccination. He's not going to go perform at those venues, which is going to whittle down the number of places he can perform. We'll tell you more about that coming up here in just a moment. We're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts first. Tom is on the line in Baltimore. You're on Free Talk Live.
Good for Jim Brewer. He hails from Maryland. I used to live in Harford County, where he hails from. So
nice.
I'm glad to hear that. Ian, it's been a while. I'm sorry to hear about your court troubles. How are you doing with that?
Well, I'm on pretty severe bail conditions, Tom. You're referring to the Crypto 6 situation, which people can learn more about at thecrypto6.com, where the FBI and a bunch of other government agencies, goon squads, raided the studios, broke in at 6 a.m. and terrorized people. And it's pretty awful, but it is what it is. So we got lawyers and we're going to court.
I wish you the best luck, my friend.
Thanks, man. What were you calling about tonight?
Well, you were talking about police corruption, and that's something that has always been a concern of mine. Relative to the FOP, I've been out of the business for a little bit, but the FOP has really always been more of a union and a fraternal organization, kind of like the American Legion. I belong to both. And
is it true that anybody can just roll in from the public and have a drink at their party house or whatever, their meeting house?
No.
I've been to events where people rent at the hall at FOPs, but
it's a private club.
We rent the halls out, but at least here in Maryland, the lodge that I belong to and the ones that I'm aware of, just like the American Legion, you have to be a member to actually go there and sit down, have a drink, and have something to eat.
I've been in American Legions without being a member.
Yeah, weren't you there with someone though who was though? That normally is the case.
Nope, not at all. Maybe they just knew me because a lot of people knew me at the time, and I was kind of part of the Oath Keepers, and so
there you go. That works. That works as well.
I didn't walk in with somebody,
So what about it, Tom? What did you want to share about these organizations, the corruption?
Well, relative to the gangs, that's been a problem for decades in the military. In fact, the military CID has extensive literature on the gang members and organizations that have infiltrated the military. They join the military to gain tactical skills, and they come out into the real world and become real menaces and cause havoc, furthering their criminal enterprises. And it's not surprising, and I was aware that that was happening also to a lesser extent. Now, it might have gained popularity within different police departments. I have said for decades, I think I even spoke about it on this show before, that consolidating different police departments was a real problem because when you've got one single police entity, it's real easy to track by the members different operations that are occurring. For example, in Baltimore and in New York City, in years past, decades actually, there were separate police entities. Usually they went to the same academy but came out and reported to their respective agencies. For example, New York had the transit police, they had housing authority police, they had park police, and they had your police service area, your regular police, if you will. They all basically performed the same duties, but in separate areas. Okay. And they all had their separate skill sets. Now, that poses a problem for folks who want to organize themselves into these gangs or an offshoot of an already existing gang, because you've got a real good chance of getting locked up by somebody from one of these other separate sister agencies. And to me, that's a good thing. When you consolidate all of those, it just makes for one big information clearinghouse that they use to their benefit.
Hold on. When you say really you've got a good chance of getting locked up, when you say you mean if you're a police officer in one of the other agencies? Is that what you mean?
Exactly. If you're a police officer or a group of police officers who are doing dirt, who are bad cops, and we've got plenty of them, you've got a better chance of getting locked up if you're working in a jurisdiction that has multiple police agencies operating there, because you've not formed the close ties necessarily with people from these other agencies. You don't know what undercover operations they're necessarily running, and you've got a much greater probability of running into a problem with another police officer than you do if you basically got the whole game plan down from your own agency. I mean, it can still happen, of course, because you've got different divisions. However, I think consolidation of these different agencies is not a good idea, and I think what we're talking about tonight kind of proves my point.
So you're saying that even with a government monopoly on quote-unquote protection, if there are multiple competing agencies within a geographic area, that can provide some level of a check or a balance instead of it all being under the same bureaucratic umbrella? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I've witnessed it firsthand. In fact, there are agencies who want to try to weed out the corruption, and normally they'll go to a separate county or a separate city and have them come in, or have the state police come in to actually work undercover and to actually do the investigation and ultimately in conjunction with the agency who requested the help make the arrest.
Well, of course, for all of what you're saying, and while I'm not going to deny it, I mean, you've been a cop. I remember you from calling the show in previous years. I'm not going to deny your experience, and it does make some level of sense. Obviously, it has done very little to stop corruption, right? Because there's a ton of it. I mean, it's just slightly better, maybe the system that you're talking about, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all, everybody's under the same department. But there's still monopolies of power. There's still government agencies. They're still completely unaccountable to people. They still can get away with murder.
It's kind of funny, too. You see, like, an undercover cop trying to, go after people, just maybe not other cops, but then it ends up the people that they end up trying to arrest ends up being another undercover cop. So
that
it's
has happened before.
Yeah. It's pretty funny when that happens because, like, you have to convict maybe? I don't know how that works. Like, you've proven that this person has committed a crime, and it goes vice versa back and forth.
Well, they can drop the charges.
Oh, I guess so.
Oh,
well,
shoot. That's one of our guys.
Ian brings up a very good point. It's certainly not a panacea. It's just a better system than when you have one department. And the gentleman who just made that comment, you're so absolutely on point. No doubt about it. Listen, there's one thing when it comes to making an arrest. You're talking about a whole nother ball game and a whole nother set of corruption within the prosecutor's office when it comes to getting a conviction.
Yeah. Absolutely true. Hey, Tom, thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. But, what is the actual solution here? Well, we suggested people who love freedom ought to migrate to New Hampshire. But then what, right? Like, okay, move and then question mark. Well, ultimately, I think a lot of us liberty-minded folks want to see the end of the monopoly system, to end government policing entirely. And that's a pretty big thing to talk to people about. It's a pretty tough topic. It's one thing to talk about secession or New Hampshire declaring independence. There's a lot of tough issues that come up with that. What about the military, as we discussed earlier tonight? And what do you talk to people about when it comes to ending the police? What would you suggest they be replaced with?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I thought about being a cop. I can't stand cops. I can't stand, but it's not that I don't like what cops are purported to do legitimately.
Yeah.
I love the idea of, protection and personal security and people being secure in
people
society.
Want that.
Well, I would love to offer that as there are cops all throughout my family. I would love to.
What about self-policing? I would like to see the right-minded people move to New Hampshire, and that we don't have to really worry about having cops around, because we're going to have people
first and
just
foremost,
our
your
neighbors
security is
doing
your
it.
problem.
Let's talk about it further coming up here in moments. 603-283-6160. You can join us. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. If you want to join us, you can. We're talking about one of the more difficult subjects of how do you get from here where we've got a ton of these government gangs around calling themselves the police that kidnap peaceful people, put them in cages, and then keep them there for some arbitrary amount of time and get paid big money to keep doing this stuff. How do you get from a situation like that to a situation of freedom where we don't have to be forced to pay for these gang members, where we don't have, prohibitions out there? And if obviously you can repeal prohibitions and then they supposedly won't enforce them. But you still have the monopolies. You still have the government monopolies of police. How do you go to what you were talking about, Matt, where you might want to start up a protection service and offer some sort of contractually based protection service for people that feel the need to have that? And Joe, as you pointed out, you want to have a society where there's not even a need for that because people are so good and there's no issue with, violence or whatever. That seems a little utopian. I think you're always going to have, psychopaths that are, whatever, 1% of the population or less or something like that. And somebody's going to want, whether it's a violent society or not. And honestly, New Hampshire's a pretty peaceful place as it is.
1% sounds pretty good, though. I mean, comparative to like some of these cities that have way more than that.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that psychopaths are attracted to jobs like the police. So having a position of power over other humans is going to attract lunatics, unless you're in a voluntary organization that can be fired. Because if you hire a bunch of lunatics, Matt, for your your policing service or whatever it would be, protection service, and they start like roughing people up on the streets and making a real mess of things,
you're going to go out of business.
You're likely going to go under because no one wants to hire lunatics and psychopaths.
You could also be liable for whatever crimes or damage was done.
That's another good point. The police aren't liable for anything they do. It's very rare that you can hold them accountable for their actions, even if they were against their own rules or against the law or whatever. They're given qualified immunity or sovereign immunity. And, people have identified that that's a problem, but they haven't been able to change the system to get rid of it.
And not going to change.
No, it's not going to change.
There are private police forces out there, like in Detroit, because the Detroit police can't handle it. So
you mean like Threat Defense Center? Isn't that what they're called?
I'm not exactly sure what the name of them are.
What's
I know
like
Vice did
you gotta look it up
some
now.
videos on it. But sorry about that. I'll put you down a new rabbit hole there. But no, they've actually solved a lot of issues, and the police. The actual, government police can't handle everything.
Threat Management Center.
Threat Management.
That's what they're called.
That's right.
And I feel like they've done better at investigating or basically settling issues without having to go further into a
peacefully settling things.
Kangaroo court systems.
Yeah. De-escalating the situation. Yeah, of course, these private organizations would have incentives to do that stuff. Because, they want to increase their business, and if they're seen as peacemakers rather than people that go and just crack heads whenever there's a situation like, you got to fight at a bar, you don't have to hurt the people, you don't have to put them in a cage, you just have to take them home. Get them out of there for that night. And that's a long time ago, the government police behaved more like that. There's people who will tell you that decades ago, if a cop would pull you over for a DUI, he'd take you home.
Right.
And that's more of a de-escalatory kind of situation. Yep. They're not cranking up the violence that they're using against people.
Now, if you've created a victim, then it's like you have to do restitution. If you're refusing that, then they're going to hold you. That's how I look at it. Even in a private police force, it's like that you have to be responsible for your actions. You're going to pay restitution. And maybe that requires you to be locked up for a little bit. I'm not totally against prison systems as long as you're actually a criminal, have caused victims.
Think how few prison cells that would be needed if we were only putting people in there who had an actual victim,
right,
and were not repentant about it.
That's right.
Because if you screwed up and you're drunk outside of a bar and you get into a fight with somebody and you realize you made a mistake and you're sorry about it, then you don't really need to go to prison as long as you're willing to pay the restitution. Like you're saying, if you're like an honorable person, otherwise you don't have some history of killing people or whatever, and you're employed, then you can just cut a check every week. Or
and as it is, even U.S. prisons are just jammed full of drug offenders. It's like, who cares?
Right.
Literally nobody cares about drugs, and the war on drugs is an extreme success for drugs.
But it does feed prison labor.
And it feeds prison labor.
Because they need people to make those license plates or whatever.
And it also feeds the prison guard unions and the police unions and everybody else who
and the
wants
private prison companies that are in bed with the government.
Yep.
Sounds like this giant house of cards ready to fail if one thing breaks in it. But
so if you just, I think it's something like 77% of people in prison are in for non-violent offenses, and a good percent of the ones who are left in there are in for violent offenses that were drug war driven.
I'll tell you this: he's retired now, but for years he was the superintendent of the jail here in Keene. His name was Rick Van Wickler, and he's a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And he was one of the few members of, and by the way, they've changed their name. It's no longer Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. It's now Law Enforcement Action Partnership, so it's still LEAP. They've taken on other issues, so they used to just be against prohibition.
Okay.
Now they're against police militarization and like Bearcats and things like that. So they've expanded in a good way. I was happy to see that. And so anyway, he would go to things like, if there was a marijuana decrim proposal, he'd go testify in favor of it.
Sure.
So good guy, all things considered, right? Like he still was doing a bad job because he's still putting these peaceful people behind bars. And I remember when I was in that jail for civil disobedience a decade ago, he came through the cell block one day, and I stopped him and we had a chat. And I asked him, how many people in the jail did he believe shouldn't be there? And he said, I think he said at least 40% of them. So like even his own, by his numbers.
That's a huge number for a cop.
He admitted, like, these guys shouldn't be here. Like almost half the jail shouldn't be in there.
Like I got a cousin who's a cop, and he says, I hate drug arrests. He says the war on drugs is a war against people.
Mm-hmm.
Drugs are property, and people who have drug addictions. He says you don't take people with mental illnesses and put them in prison for having a mental illness, and that's exactly what I do every day, and I hate it.
And they still get drugs in prison. So
sure they do.
And it's worse. It's all they have to do.
And they pay 10 times as much for them, too.
Sure.
In fact, to that point, we were talking with a officer in the Keene Police Department today. He just happened to come by our dinner table while Bonnie and I were sitting out in downtown Keene while I had permission to leave my house from my federal handler.
A guy who, by all other accounts, is an absolute loser, has a saving grace.
Yeah, I try to treat these guys like human beings, even when they're not treating me like a human being. And he was being nice on this particular day, so I was being kind to him in return. And he admitted or claimed that when he was the prosecutor, because here in Keene they let an actual cop do like the low-level prosecutions, and he said that every marijuana case that came in front of him, so this was before decrim happened, he reduced to a violation just because he didn't want people to go to jail for it.
So you asked that cop, is it how many people deserve to be in here? Here's a better question. How many actually going to be in there that is actually resourceful? As in, is it really resourceful to keep them in there?
There's more coming up here. The number is 603-283-6160.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States has defended its new military alliance with Australia and the United Kingdom following an international diplomatic backlash. The three-way AUKUS agreement will allow Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines using US and UK technology. But the security alliance has angered China. Beijing sees it as an effort to counter its claims in the South China Sea, and it's caused problems with US ally France. As Nick Harper reports from Washington.
It was a day of being on the defence about the new Defence Alliance. The US, UK and Australia heralded it as a historic opportunity, but France felt particularly cold-shouldered, losing out on a $66 billion deal to build Australia's submarines. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken tried to calm the waters of international diplomacy.
There is no regional divide separating the interests of our Atlantic and our Pacific partners. This partnership with Australia and the United Kingdom is a signal that we're committed to working with our allies and partners, including in Europe.
The White House says France was warned about the alliance before it was announced.
Southwest has become the latest US airline to start offering staff extra money to be vaccinated against COVID-19. It comes as the Delta variant has caused a new wave of coronavirus infections across the country. US correspondent Rachel Silverman has the details.
Southwest says it will offer extra pay to staff who show proof of full vaccination by mid-November, pay equal to about 2 extra days of work. The airline also says it will stop sick pay for unvaccinated workers who have to quarantine with COVID-19. The U.S. Department of Labor is set to make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory at larger private firms and federal employers in the coming weeks, affecting up to 100 million U.S. workers. Rachel Silverman, Oakland.
Global online retailer ASOS has set out a series of environmental and social targets, which include achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2030. It comes after Primark made a similar announcement on Wednesday, promising to halve its carbon emissions by the same date. Aisling Taylor reports from London.
The global retailer made over £1,000 million worth of sales in the EU last year, but has faced criticism over its impact on the environment. The goals include reducing emissions in the production and distribution of products, as well as ensuring 50% female and 15% ethnic minority representation in leadership positions by 2030. But critics claim lack of transparency means the company's progress will be difficult to monitor. Aisling Taylor, London.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up what you want. The number is 603-283-6160. We were talking about the Los Angeles Police Department and the corruption, serious corruption, like gangs within the gang of the Los Angeles Police Department. And then that led to a conversation about, well, what do you do about this? What do you do generally about the corruption within any police department? Because you can talk to the few honest police officers out there will tell you that there are some bad people in policing. And that there's very little that seems to be done about it because, well, a lot of them, rise up through the ranks, and the elites are corrupt too. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to root out corruption when it's, systemic in this whole thing? And so that's kind of one of the things we're discussing. Like, how do we get from here to there? How do we go from this government one-size-fits-all monopoly policing system to a more market-based protection system with freedom to choose who your protectors are, if any? You don't have to, but
some
maybe
people need it.
Right. Maybe you feel like you need, and you mentioned Threat Management Center, which is a really interesting example of this. It's a Detroit-based organization. They're still in existence. Yeah, they've been around for like a decade at least now, I think, or close to it. And they offer differing levels of service. Mm-hmm. So let's say you've got like a neighborhood watch group or something like that in your area. Maybe that's good enough. Or maybe you want to have a separate group like Threat Management Center. Maybe you want them to roll through like with a cruiser once an hour or once every 3 hours or, a few times a day or something like that. Or maybe you want them there every 10 minutes. Like they can do differing levels of service for different people. Maybe you want, you're some sort of high-end celebrity, you're Nicki Minaj, and your fan base just turned against you because you came out as a thinking person
Who would have thought?
On the internet. You've got an opinion, you shared it, and now people are coming after you. Maybe you need 24/7 security. They do that too. Yeah. So, they go from everything from just training people on how to defend themselves all the way on up to 24-hour security and everything in between. That's what you get in a marketplace.
Brilliant business model and a necessary service.
Yeah. That's what you get in a marketplace. And like you said, they came about because the government police just suck so bad. And at one point, it was, several years ago, if not a decade ago, the Detroit official government police in certain areas of the city, they announced, all right, well, we're closing our offices. We're not going to be open at night. Right. So if you got a crime to report, you're going to have to come in during the daytime when we're open. And, of course, if people called them, then they weren't showing up at all. It wasn't like you had to wait a half hour. They just weren't coming if you were in certain areas of the city. And so there literally was a vacuum, and there was an opportunity where this organization could spring up and actually get customers. And so they're a really interesting thing to look at.
There's a lot of like volunteer action happen in Detroit. Maybe there's some parks that are being neglected, like playgrounds and that sort of thing. And volunteers just coming in with their own lawnmowers and just going, yeah, we'll take care of it. Nice. And
that's anarchy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like they probably have a higher standard on how this private police force acts, and they probably don't want to lose their reputation because they want to be hired. If they do something wrong, no one's going to hire them.
The only way, though, this is going to change for good, without the complete failure of the state, which could happen, right? And that's what we're seeing in Detroit, but it's not anywhere near happening in New Hampshire. Like, the state government here is relatively small compared to other states elsewhere out there. The the level of debt they have is low. The government, thanks to the Free Staters in the legislature, just actually cut the budget by 3.3%. So how many other state governments are cutting their budget? I asked that question on the air. So far, no one has answered it. I was like, hey, is there anybody else? The 49 other states, has any other state cut their budget in 2021?
Are there any other states that didn't increase their budget?
Right.
I bet there is.
I bet you there's not. So, things are a little bit different here. We've proven that the political system, as unwieldy and as awful and as terrible as it is a legitimate mean towards change. That's, we've got people elected.
Even the governor came out, I think it was yesterday, even though he's promoting people, get the vaccine, he's not forcing it. But he's actually gone the opposite way and said that we will not have any legislation forcing vaccination. And he's basically put it
there's legislation that prohibited that. That passed this summer. So there's legislation that has prohibited the government gang from mandating vaccines here in New Hampshire, which has upset the colleges because they wanted to mandate and they get government money.
Those dirtbags.
So the colleges cannot mandate, and they're so mad about it, but they can't do it. So we actually have a prohibition on that, but I don't trust that governor.
Well, he this was yesterday, I believe. Yeah, yesterday. It says vaccine mandate, not good government, like any government's good. Pledges to fight it in court. He actually, is declaring.
Oh, he's talking about Joe Biden's mandate.
Yes.
Yeah, so he wants to fight against that.
If Joe Biden was a Republican, would Chris Sununu say the same thing?
No way.
No way.
Yeah. He's a scumbag. I mean, we know he's a scumbag. He mandated masks. We sued him over the mask mandate, and the federal government kicked it out of court. So they told us we didn't have standing after almost a year in that particular lawsuit. We never even got an initial hearing on that. So he's protected, and luckily we don't need his signature to put the secession ballot measure on, the New Hampshire independence ballot measure. We don't need that to go through him. It doesn't go through him. So all it has to do is pass the House and the Senate, and then the people of New Hampshire get to vote on it in 2022. So that's all
right.
That's the plan, at least, unless the legislature decides to mess with it.
I hate it when they make me want to go to a voting booth.
Right? Well, it's not there yet, so we'll give it time and see if it shakes out. I hope it does. We'll keep you updated on that as it develops here. But to get to a situation where you can actually have Threat Management Center of New Hampshire and also have them have competitors, we're probably going to need to just end the government police. I mean, and they're not likely to completely fail on their own volition here in New Hampshire because they're not in shambles like they are in Detroit, and they're probably not going to get that way anytime soon.
I don't know if that's true. I don't think the government has to come to an end for threat management centers in Detroit prove that the government.
But they're filling in a necessary gap.
I know, but I think we could probably start building the infrastructure anyway and making people comfortable with the idea of saying, look, these guys drive around in a black Suburban all the time. They've got, The
hard part is getting the funding, because you're going to come up against the objection of, well, I already pay for the police. Why do I need just like the same reason why people?
I think that's a cost of doing business. The startup is there's going to be startup costs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like me out there. I've got the tools and the equipment.
I know Pete Ayer's been interested in doing something like that for a long time.
Pete Ayer's a great example.
He's been talking about that recently, from what I understand, of starting up something out in Manchester.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm not saying it can't be done.
Maybe just a neighborhood, not just all Manch.
There are no businesses that are there are very, very, very few businesses that are easy to get off the ground.
That's true.
And to cost nothing. And I do think this is the type of thing that could be bootstrapped by average people.
Yeah, and even if you can do that, the problem is, like, for instance, there are private schools, and there are people who are paying taxes and then not sending their kids to private schools, although New Hampshire does now have a special program called education savings accounts that actually allow for parents to get like thousands of dollars from the state government and send their kids to a private school. So that's a new thing as of this year, I believe.
Wow, so they take extorted money so they can send their kids to not government
basically they get their own money back in that case. I mean, they're getting their own money, but the point being, there are people who for a long time have paid property taxes for the government schools, and then on top of that, paid for a private school. So that's what people would have to do to hire your company. They'd have to pay for the government police that they don't want, and then hire your company. So there may be a market for it. I don't know.
And you don't need to. The most important part of starting that business is going to be getting in the streets and making yourself visible.
And valuable. But you'll also, I think at some point you have to end the government police, and that's going to be a political process.
I think more people will be willing to pull the trigger on ending the police
if there was a replacement.
If there was a replacement ready to go.
That's a good point. And that's agorism.
Yeah, and that's agorism.
Well, Manchester Police is not very good.
Yeah.
We could really use some private policing.
Yeah, and I think Pete would be great at it. I think you'd probably be great too.
I would love to do it.
603-283-6160. And I agree with you. Yeah, having an alternative to turn to is going to make it more real for people when the proposal is made to end government coercive.
I vouch for you, Matt and Pete.
we just got to figure out what color our lights are going to be on our car because they're not allowed to be blue.
Yeah, a bunch of them are illegal. Red's also illegal too. More coming up. Free Talk Live. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. If you want to join us here in the remaining moments, we got time for you. You just got to dial in at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Talking about moving from the monopoly police service that the government gang has been foisting upon us for our entire lives to a choice-based, market-based service where you get to decide who, if anyone, you want to give your money to hire them for protection services. As you pointed out, Joa, you said you're not against the idea of having a prison in theory as long as it's actual violent psychos that are put in there. I think most people would agree that people like Jeffrey Dahmer or whatever need to be kept away.
It's important to get those people off the streets.
Right. They're not sorry for what they did. They're not going to make things right.
Some of them are sorry, but they can't stop.
Yeah. And they can't, so something has to happen to those folks. And I think whatever the model would look like as far as funding is concerned, people would make it happen because that's what people want. And the thing the market does best is it gives people what they want. It never has a problem doing that. It may not be exactly what you thought the market should provide. And if you think the market should provide something else, then you ought to get into that market.
Everybody loves organic, free range everything until it comes to their markets. And I don't understand that.
What do you mean?
A free market is just an organic market. It burbles up from necessity, and there's lots of competition, and that's how organics really work, right? Isn't that how nature thrives? Because it's allowed to.
Yeah.
The animal spirit, some people call it.
The animal spirits.
So let's see. A little bit more here from the corruption story in Los Angeles, just because it's interesting. The report that the Los Angeles police had run by the RAND Corporation, which apparently is military-industrial complex or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
They did a study on these internal gangs within the Los Angeles, the sheriff's department there. And there are allegations that the Banditos, which is one of the gangs, have used violence against inmates in custody as an initiation rite, requiring young deputies to use unnecessary force before they will receive the Click's tattoo, which is a skeleton in a sombrero holding a revolver. The report relays the allegations in a quote from a mid-level staff member in the sheriff's department. Quote, "So you have a kid who wants to be accepted. They would ask, 'Are you ready to get your ink?' And that means that you had to get into a use of force and send an inmate to the hospital.
Wow.
Sometimes by breaking the orbital bone."
So cracking the skull.
The staffer claimed department superiors often look the other way or even covered for the abuse. Quote, "Some supervisors didn't even write up the use of force, or some of the uses of force write-ups disappeared," the staffer said. Time goes on, and they're used to this madness in custody. So this gang is so integrated in this department that they know that when the young guys that are initiating go and crack some inmate's head open, that they know that the report, if it gets even written in the first place, is going to be put in the circular file.
Sure.
So, there's not even a risk, really, that this guy's going to face any kind, the cop is going to face any kind of punishment for hurting somebody. Outrage over the gangs isn't new, and they go into, again, this, like I said, we've talked previously about this issue. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva has promised change. In February of 2020, they implemented a new policy mandating that department personnel shall not participate or join in any group which promotes conduct that violates the rights of other employees or members of the public. The policy recognizes that, quote, "participation in these illicit groups, which often include an associated symbol and or tattoo, harms morale and erodes public trust," unquote. Well, see, they made a new rule, and that's going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Thank God that's fixed.
But the RAND report characterizes the reform effort to date as vague and confusing. Quote, "Sheriff Villanueva has seemingly clarified this policy is intended to prohibit subgroups completely, although statements made to the Civilian Oversight Commission have appeared to contradict a firm message of prohibition. Reporting by the LA Times has also highlighted the emptiness of his reforms, including the sheriff's misleading claims that he'd cleaned house at the East LA station and successfully had broken up the Banditos. In a statement released Friday, he acknowledged the release of the report, but said he hadn't yet read it. Quote, I look forward to learning about their study, methodologies used, limitations, the sheriff said, and seeing how their recommendations can inform the massive reform efforts already underway. See, it's already massive. They're gonna have this thing cleaned up in no time flat.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Nothing.
Yeah, right. There's an attorney who represents the deputies who are suing the county, claiming they were harassed and retaliated against by the Banditos specifically. Says that the false promises from the sheriff of reform have only exacerbated a bad situation. He said the study demonstrates the problem isn't just one gang, the Banditos, run amok in East LA, terrorizing one community and one station, is just how, he says the biggest takeaway is how much the deputy gang culture dominates the entire Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. The corrupt gang culture is the status quo.
I mean, at this point, if you're a good cop or you think you're a good cop and you're doing the right thing and you're actually like not part of any of these, you really should just quit. Just quit.
Yeah, do
Let
something
them rise
honorable.
up. Let them just completely
Those
be
guys are
dominant.
just more people who think they're going to fix it from the inside, and you're not.
No.
You won't. You will fail. Hate to break it to you.
You'll either end up joining them or they're going to end up possibly hurting you.
Oh, they could hurt you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, these guys are crazy, and there's no doubt that if you're a threat to them, they're going to use violence against you, right? And that's apparently why whatever good cops are out there, if you talk to them, they'll tell you that, hey, I'm afraid to come out. I'm afraid to go against the system.
Yeah. I know a cop who went against the grain. I personally know a cop who went against the grain. And
What
one
happened
day,
to him?
He was sent to, I don't want to let on too much about what he did, but he went against the grain. He was sent to pick up a child molester who on a probation violation, and when he got there, the guy was just under 7 feet tall, about 300 pounds.
Sent alone,
and the guy beat the absolute snot out of him, broke his knee, messed him up real bad. Fortunately, this cop was a mixed martial artist, black belt, and did get the guy into cuffs.
Wow!
But he was out of work for 6 months with a messed up knee and lots of physical therapy and a lot of road to come back.
Is he still working?
Yeah, he's still working.
Wow.
He's dumb.
It's kind of like
quit. I hope he listens. He's libertarian. I hope he quits.
Yeah, I like to say there's no good cops out there because I knew a good cop and he's retired.
Yeah.
They forced him to retire.
Yeah.
And like he was on his way to be like a chief, and they just would not let that happen. And they put someone like not even really qualifying into that position. And he was like, I'm done. I'm retired.
Speaking of people going against the grain, kudos to Jim Brewer. According to the New York Post, he is going against his venues that he'd scheduled shows, and then he found out that venues were requiring vaccinations of their customers in order to go see Jim Brewer perform, and he said he's not playing those venues. According to the New York Post, quote, this is what Brewer said. He's 54. He said, 2 quick updates on shows you may think you may be getting tickets to. This is an update he posted to his Facebook. Or you already have tickets to Wellmont Theater in New Jersey, not doing it. He said on a 22-minute broadcast that is now trending on Twitter.
Nice.
Quote, also the Royal Oak Theater in Michigan, due to the segregation of them forcing people to show up with vaccinations, I am not doing these shows. I know I'm going to sacrifice a lot of money, but I'm not going to be enslaved to the system or money.
Nice.
I think he prefers the herd immunity with the, the puff pass. It's like
I don't think he claims to not be a user of cannabis.
Oh, wow.
It's
Shocker.
unbelievable. The funny guy emphasized the vaccination is a choice and has decided to cancel bookings at all venues that don't align with his values. He says, quote, if you have anything else to say, I honestly don't care. Due to I have to stick to my morals. I have to stick to what I know is right.
Attaboy.
About time.
He alleged that guests are being forced and bribed into vaccination by venues, which he believes are being held hostage by pro-vax lawmakers and corporate ticketing vendors.
Nailed it.
So kudos to him for that.
Absolutely.
Rest in peace, Jim Brewer, in a couple months.
Sorry,
bro.
Kudos to one other person too. I want to get in before we close the show. I was speaking to one of our co-hosts earlier tonight, and Nobody, formerly known as Rich Paul, who is not allowed to broadcast and is not allowed to have conversations with certain people. I say he says that he wants everybody out there in Radio Land to know that he thinks about them regularly, and he misses everybody and wants everybody just wants to say hi to everybody.
Oh, that's cool. I miss nobody as well. He's a real talent and is sorely missed here on the air. So I'm glad he's out of the prison cell, though. So.
Me too.
So that's good. I hope he's enjoying a little bit of, nice mattress, nice pillow, a little bit of nice food. And we are out of time for tonight. Joe, plug your channel on Odyssey.
Breaking the Flaw.
Check him out over there. You can go to Odyssey over at video.freetalklive.com. Follow the Free Talk Live channel, then search for Breaking the Flaw, and follow his channel as well. And if you're not on Odyssey yet, what are you waiting for? Get on over there and get signed up for your own account. We'll see you tomorrow night online in the meantime over at freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is the Liberty Radio Network, broadcasting the latest liberty-oriented audio content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The United States has defended its new military alliance with Australia and the United Kingdom following an international diplomatic backlash. The three-way AUKUS agreement will allow Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines using US and UK technology. But the security alliance has angered China. Beijing sees it as an effort to counter its claims in the South China Sea, and it's caused problems with US ally France. As Nick Harper reports from Washington.
It was a day of being on the defence about the new Defence Alliance. The US, UK and Australia heralded it as a historic opportunity. But France felt particularly cold-shouldered, losing out on a $66 billion deal to build Australia's submarines. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken tried to calm the waters of international diplomacy.
There is no regional divide separating the interests of our Atlantic and our Pacific partners. This partnership with Australia and the United Kingdom is a signal that we're committed to working with our allies and partners, including in Europe.
The White House says France was warned about the alliance before it was announced.
Southwest has become the latest US airline to start offering staff extra money to be vaccinated against COVID-19. It comes as the Delta variant has caused a new wave of coronavirus infections across the country. US correspondent Rachel Silverman has the details.
Southwest says it will offer extra pay to staff who show proof of full vaccination by mid-November, pay equal to about 2 extra days of work. The airline also says it will stop sick pay for unvaccinated workers who have to quarantine with COVID-19. The U.S. Department of Labor is set to make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory at larger private firms and federal employers in the coming weeks, affecting up to 100 million U.S. workers. Rachel Silverman, Oakland.
Global online retailer ASOS has set out a series of environmental and social targets, which include achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2030. It comes after Primark made a similar announcement on Wednesday, promising to halve its carbon emissions by the same date. Aisling Taylor reports from London.
The global retailer made over £1,000 million worth of sales in the EU last year, but has faced criticism over its impact on the environment. The goals include reducing emissions in the production and distribution of products, as well as ensuring 50% female and 15% ethnic minority representation in leadership positions by 2030. But critics claim lack of transparency means the company's progress will be difficult to monitor. Aisling Taylor, London.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
The Princeton Medical Institute has found that the most common deathbed regret, more than losing contact with family or spending too much time at the office, is never having sprayed a fire extinguisher all over the place.
Similar themes emerged in our interviews with dying patients. Some wished that they'd taken more risks. Others wished that they'd lived a life truer to their dreams. But almost every single person surveyed, regardless of their age or circumstance, said that their most significant regret was never having grabbed a fire extinguisher off a wall and blasted it around a room until it ran out of foam.
I've lived a good life. I was a nurse for 32 years. I have 3 beautiful children, but I've never smashed my elbow into a glass case, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and gone whoosh over everything.
This is the Onion News Network.
The latest episode of Declare Your Independence is next, here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM.
Recording in progress.
Oh, a special edition of Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock. Independence declaring kind of individuals. The Smith family. Well, L. Neil Smith was a big impression on a lot of us here in Arizona and around the world. I mean, L. Neil had a following. And it was interesting, while we were doing a show, Bob Anderson and I, we were doing a show a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about a lot of the things L. Neil's always been a good resource for getting the philosophy right. And here's L. Neil, and this is his wife Kathy and his daughter Rilla. And I remember when Rilla was itty bitty teeny weeny. How old are you, Rilla?
I'm 31 years old.
So you were a baby, when we first came across L. Neil, got to meet him, and became good friends back in the early 90s. So you had to be 3 years old or something. So we've grown up hearing about you and talking, with L. Neil. He's always very proud of you and your accomplishments. So what we wanted to do is I just wanted to give you an opportunity to tell the audience about your dad and your husband, because we don't get the at-home life. We don't get behind the scenes the influence that he's had on his own family. And a lot of times you're never a prophet in your own land. So I just wondered, how he was seen and his writing style and his conditions, how he would write and when he would write. And I know later on as his health waned, he counted on you guys to kind of help a little bit, I would imagine. But what we're looking at here is the Libertarian Enterprise. Now, it's the website is NC-1776.org, and of course it's reference to Star Trek Enterprise, and he was very futuristic. He wrote how many books? It had to be in the dozens. How many books did he have, Kathy?
34 or 35, I believe, is the last count.
Wow.
Not all of them fiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not all of them science fiction, for that matter.
I'm sorry?
Not all of them science fiction, but most of them. So I'd say 35 or 36.
If it wasn't science fiction, it was philosophy. You know, he did a lot of philosophical things, and it was mainly he always had the power down to the individual. He used to be on the Libertarian National Committee, you know, early on. He was a contemporary of Rothbard. That was a big influence on him. And I don't know if you guys know this. I want to share this with you. The first time we heard of L. Neil Smith, he had given a speech at the Salt Lake City, Utah Libertarian National Convention. I think that was like 92. And
I think that's right.
Yeah, when he did that, there was a phrase in it. We read his speech and we're like, oh, heck yeah, we got to have him come to Arizona, and then we became good friends. And then he was a presidential nominee on the ballot in Arizona representing libertarians. Now, Harry Brown was on 49 other states, but in Arizona, he was our presidential candidate, along with Vince Zaprinowicz, Las Vegas Review-Journal editor and author himself, was the VP. And he was really happy with that. I made sure he got a sample ballot or so. He probably has that somewhere, you know. And the reason was it was because the National Libertarian Party had been stupid, done stupid stuff, and being stupid, and we needed a real libertarian. And L. Neil fit the bill. And the influence he had on us in that speech, I remember he said, he goes, "Those Nerf libertarians with their foam core platform." And we go, oh, we know exactly what you're talking about. And he was so uncompromising because in his novels, in his books, in his philosophy, it was very clear that he saw America heading where it is now. And I'm wondering over the last year, before we get into that, I'd like to know you guys are in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I want to know what his writing environment was. Did he go to his desk in the cave underneath the bunker of whatever? I mean, how did he have the time and the clarity to sit and write so much? How did that go?
He sat in his office. His office was in what was once the living room of our house, so it was the largest room in the house. And he got up and went to his desk every day, usually in his underwear. And he sat surrounded by the